Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, February 17th, 2023. This is a special budget workshop of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. We are live at City Hall, Commissioners Room, second floor. Thank you for being here. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. With that, I'm going to take the roll call, and we'll just abbreviate this. Well, let me go ahead through everybody. Commissioner Sharp?
Here.
Commissioner Legree?
Here.
Commissioner Chernowski?
Here.
Commissioner Gossett?
Here.
Commissioner Bennett?
Here.
Commissioner Markert indicated he might be in a little late for this morning's meeting, and Mayor Stan Mills. So we do have a quorum and are able to formally conduct business today. I'd also like to introduce the staff members that are here today. I'm vacant on each side because City Manager Lawrence Christian is sitting out in front with us. On this side, Glenn Mandalis is not usually invited to budget meetings, so he's not here today. He'll join us later at the regular meeting. We also have present Bert Dukes, our financial supervisor. We've got Assistant City Manager Evan Miller, Chief Keith Banks of the Police Department, Officer Lieutenant Riddle of the Police Department, Captain of the Beach Patrol, Captain Giles, Corey Grohl, head of the Bandstand. Let's see who else out there. Lynn Cohen, our communications specialist, and I think hiding back there, yes, is Kevin Williams, Public Works Director. So thank you all for being here today and joining with us. I'd also like to thank everybody that's here in person today to participate with us. As you know, at certain times, if you raise your hand, we'll be glad to call on you and solicit your feedback. Also, thank everybody that's home watching virtually. We appreciate you there. And my typical note is that support documents, that is documents that support our agenda items when they're available, are embedded in the agenda. You can access that through our legislative portal, which is also accessible through the cityofrehoboth.com website. So again, thank you for being here. With that, I'd like to go to the next item of business, which is correspondence. 4 pieces of correspondence have been identified for us, and they are embedded in the agenda. They are from Lorraine Zellers, Kimberly Scott, Friends of the Rehoboth Beach Library, and Edie and Jim Heron. They are all supportive of funding the Rehoboth Beach Public Library. Next item of business is to discuss a recommendation to award a contract for the water meter replacement program as presented by the Director of Public Works. If you noticed on the agenda for our regular meeting beginning at 2 o'clock, well, there's an agenda item that if we're ready and comfortable to be able to consider or vote on this particular item. So with that, we'll turn it over to Kevin Williams, Public Works Supervisor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for fitting me into this agenda and this afternoon's as we're getting very late in our fiscal year and we're very late getting this contract out on the street. So appreciate that. As we talked last year on our budget briefing, we're going to do our annual water meter replacement contract. Our intent was to do kind of North Rehoboth, finish out kind of Henlopen Avenue, Columbia, and the like. Total of about a little over 600 or so meters we were going to try to do. We've obviously had some significant supply chain issues. We have not been able to get that number of meters. So we reduced the number about in half. We're trying to get about 300 done this year. So we advertised a little over a month ago, and we opened bids last week. We had 2 bidders. These are the same 2 contractors that have bid on all of our water meter replacement contracts. We've had each one. They've both done a good job for us. Our low bidder this year was R&C Contractors with a low bid of $99,768.75. May seem like a low amount, but you may recall also that because of the supply chain issues, we've gone to ordering most of the materials ourselves. Our water department ordered on 1 April last year for 600 and some meters, and we're still waiting. But we do have some available that we'll go ahead and start installing under this contract, as soon as we can. So our recommendation for this afternoon will be to approve the award of the water meter replacement contract to R&C Contractors in the amount of $99,768.75.
So Kevin, you've got The two vendors there, R&C and Harry Caswell, and you said you've used both of them before.
Yes, sir.
And they've both been satisfactory in working with them.
Correct.
Very good. Okay. Any questions by the commissioners?
So Kevin, just to be clear, that amount is only for labor. It does not.
That's
does
correct.
not include any.
And for about half of the original, that we had budgeted amounts. I didn't put budget numbers up there because we're so under what we had forecast we would want to do this year.
Okay.
It really wasn't relevant. So, but yes.
Kevin, the reason that the contract was late getting on the street, was that connected to the supply chain challenges?
Yes, I won't, probably not entirely. Supply chain issues, some on us, just not getting it ready to go out on the street early enough. But we just didn't have that urgency because we didn't have the meters. And now we've got a line on when we think they're going to be delivered, at least an initial shipment. So then we got a little more energized
Thank
more
you.
recently. Thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioner Gossett?
Approximately how many does this contract cover, actual numbers?
322.
And
322.
do we have a schedule of when and the project would begin and projected conclusion of this?
If we get approval today to award, we'll issue notice to proceed on Monday, and they'll probably start before the end of next week. And then right now, we think we can get all 300 done prior to the end of the fiscal year.
And what is our plan to inform residents of when this will happen to their properties?
So Lynn has a notification that'll go out. It really won't have much of an impact for the individual homeowners because we're all out in the meter pits. And most of them are just meters, not new pits, so it doesn't take any excavation or anything. They just go in, install the new meter, and we're finished, so.
And are these the meters remote read capable?
Yes, they are.
And is that approximately how much of the city is remote read now?
Ooh, I'd have to get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Less than half, more than half?
This will put us over the half, which
Okay.
is at our next water budget meeting. We'll talk about going to the FlexNet system where you can read it from your house and know exactly where you are. But this will put us over. We think the inertia get us over that mass number that we want to get to.
All right, thank you.
Kevin, this is throughout the city, or are we targeting specific areas?
So in this case, we're
I want to go back to the map real quick.
program-wise, it's throughout the city. We had 6,000 plus or minus within our system we were trying to do. So in this case, we're doing Route 7, which I think is Henlope and Columbia, kind of that north part of town.
Okay, thanks for showing that again. So a question related. My recollection is we were doing North Shores last year specifically, and we had to scale that back for some reason.
We did North Shores a couple years ago. That might have been our first or second year we did North Shores. Depending upon how many need meter pits versus meters, we try to target our budgeted amount of, I think, 500,000 each year. So the numbers change each year based upon, where we're looking, if there's a lot of pits or not.
Okay. Yeah, for some reason I had some recollection that we started last year and had to stop or scale it back from what we originally planned, whatever area. Thank you.
Any further questions for the commissioners? Any members of the public? If not, we'll move on. Thank you very much,
Great, thank you, Mayor.
Kevin. We'll
Thank
be
you, Commissioners.
considering this afternoon. With that, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is pretty much the rest of the entirety of the meeting. Discuss draft budget for fiscal year 2023-24, including capital improvement program as presented by the Assistant City Manager and presented by the City Manager to include but not limited to Canal Dock, contributions, police, beach patrol, dispatch, bandstand, communications, seasonal employee incentives. Would like to make a note that contributions, I just keep putting on here till the end so that we have that opportunity to continue to talk about it. Canal Dock is on here again because we had some extra queries to answer. I would like to remind everybody that as we talk about this, it would be very helpful, especially for those that are home and us up here, to make sure you reference page numbers. give us a few seconds to find the page and then reference the line number if you would. That proves very helpful to us. And with that, we'll turn it over to Lawrence, who passes the baton to Evan Miller. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners, members of the public. We'll start off with some of the changes to the budget document since our last meeting. First and foremost, you'll note that the year-to-date columns on each page have been updated to reflect the year-to-date through February 8th. So that gives you a better screenshot as to how much, a better look at the expenses through the current fiscal year, again, up through the early February. We also have increased the contingency in the administrative department to plan for office space fit-out, which was mentioned by the city manager at the last meeting. What we have done since the last meeting is we actually met with a representative EDIS to discuss the third floor fit-out as well as office space for the assistant city manager on the first floor. You'll recall that EDIS was the owner's representative for the City Hall construction project, and they had actually originally scoped out the office space on the third floor. So we are still awaiting rough figures from them. Nothing has been designed yet, but we are still continuing work with that. But in anticipation of that, we have increased contingency to help plan for those expenses.
Do you have a line number or page number by any chance?
Yes, I do. The administration department is on page 8 and 9, and the contingency is on page 9. That is account 550300.
So Evan, how much was it increased?
I believe we originally had about 160,000 in there, so a few hundred thousand it was increased. We initially, when the third floor was initially scoped out, I think we had planned for roughly 110,000 for that work. We're anticipating that the cost of construction has gone up a bit, but also with the addition of the office space for the assistant city manager, we wanted to plan accordingly. So we have increased the contingency based on what we expect, also to save a cushion which we normally have in the fiscal year budget.
Evan, could you explain a little bit what that configuration would be like? I'm asking specifically, and I think Commissioner Bennett has asked this before, but we don't currently have any workspaces besides the mayor who has an office. And quite frankly, I spend more money than we make per month printing and paper and all of that. So I think we should at least have a couple workstations in the city somewhere for the commissioners to use as needed. So my question is, does it include that?
Sure. So initially, the third floor fit-out plan had planned for 2 office spaces as well as a conference room. We have sort of requested a similar configuration, but again, we have not scoped out exactly what we want that project to entail. There also is, so again, the third floor, we have planned for roughly 2 office spaces, maybe 3 office spaces and a conference room that would also retain some storage space up on the third floor. In regards to the first floor, we're looking at ways to incorporate that office space again for the assistant city manager. The other thing that I'll mention is that we do have a conference room in the communications department as well, which is certainly available to you all should you need to meet with anybody.
Okay.
I was going to ask about that. You mentioned that that's the annex building.
Yes, that's
So
correct.
is there a plan for that as well as part of this contingency? Are we going to continue utilizing that space?
There's no plan currently on the books for changing the current utilization of that area. We can talk to IT to make sure all your fobs are keyed so you can have meetings there with constituents, residents any time, because that area is not fully utilized. The contingency that Evan's speaking about the third floor build out, we'll talk about engineering scopes of plans for both sides of the third floor, the ones that you're familiar with that one line, and also the other area, I believe above the police station is an area that has not been formally built out and used. But we are looking at trying to have all that done initially in that first time, just so the engineering is complete and we have options.
Thank you.
But we haven't looked at utilization across. I was trying to
And I'll
put more
just,
time in the seat.
on that note, I'll just say again, I don't want to have a communications person working alone in a building. To me, I think if we're building out the third floor, that person should be here, and that building should be a revenue generator for the city, rather than sitting empty or utilized by one person. So,
Thank you.
I
Anybody else?
agree with that.
Commissioner Sharp?
I want to echo this issue of whether we call it conference room or group workspace or whatever. I think that's been mentioned a number of times already. And I'm curious, we're experiencing some design costs currently in your discussions. Would that be a yes?
No design costs. We're sort of scoping it, so we're trying to get an idea of how much it would cost before we proceed with actual design.
Because my bottom line now is we could have finished out the third floor for roughly
110.
somewhere, even 125. And with now the current situation, it bothers me that our deferring of things escalates our costs. I think that might be a sentiment hard to disagree with. But I'm curious if there are any costs related to this that we can pay out of our current budget rather than waiting for the next budget approved.
I think we'll have to think about that and see how far we get with EDIS before we make that determination. One thing I will mention is that Luke Vanicola, our facilities manager, he has taken some initial steps over the course of, I want to say, the last year to install a drop ceiling within that third floor room as well as drywall. So we have started to fit it out to an extent, but not as far as carpeting or office space or anything like that. So we have taken small steps towards getting closer to utilization of that space. He currently has his office up there, so we are using it. So we're trying to be mindful of the different uses that we could have up there and how to incorporate all of those. But we will continue to think about that.
And Evan, do you have any feel yet for what kind of time frame, if this were approved and it were to move forward, that it would actually take to get that up and running?
I do not. I think once we get some of the initial cost estimation back from EDIS, we'll continue those conversations and move forward with that.
Okay.
Scheduling it all out.
Next to the police chief's office, that's the best office space in the whole building, isn't it? Third floor, yeah.
Further question on that, if I may. Have we provided EDS, if you will, with a wish list of what we're looking for, the number of spaces and use spaces and storage and anything of that nature, or are they going to come back to us with suggested?
We did meet with them briefly on location, upstairs, both side, third floor, and downstairs for the assistant city manager build out. Gave them our kind of a concept, general intent, and they were going to come back with options that would potentially fit a budget or a wish list of items. So yes, met on site, provided intent, providing guidance to them.
And does this, the increase in the budget here, does that look at furniture, fixture, and equipment for those facilities also? Or is this just construction and design costs?
That would be construction in my mind.
Right.
So no desk, chairs, anything of that nature, that's not in this budget?
No, that we did not put that in this contingency. Not to my understanding.
Right, okay. And extension of telephone systems or life safety and all that, is that part of the design, or we've not put any money aside for those things?
That would be in construction, if I'm not mistaken. For the IT side of the house, life safety, we're just not talking about the things that would fall out of the room should you turn it upside down. This would be everything we built out, drywall, IT, light, things of that nature.
So could we then look at a number, and I guess it has to be timing here in essence of what comes back, but then also come up with some money set aside for furnishing the offices as opposed to folding tables and folding chairs?
Right.
Thank you.
Evan, let's be mindful that the agenda has a Canal Dock first and contribution second, and the other stuff. Just because we have some folks here from the library, and we might be able to allow them to listen in and leave.
Yeah, I just have one additional change since the last budget meeting, and then we can talk about either contributions first or Canal Dock, whatever your preference is. The last change was there was a very small increase to the parking training budget of $2,000. That is to account for a second conference, T2 conference, that the parking supervisor and administrative assistant in the parking department would like to attend. T2 Systems is the company that provides our entire back end as well as our parking meters, so it's extremely valuable to attend those conferences and stay up to date on latest technologies and current offerings. So,
And page and line number for that?
yes, that would be parking meter is page 22 and 23. And conferences, line or account 515200.
Right here. Very good. Thank you. So in a nutshell, those are the two major changes from last time. Very good.
And now we can discuss contributions or Canal Dock, whatever
Let's-
your preference
Let's
is.
get rid of the Canal Dock, this,
Sure.
don't mind.
That was a classic
I
statement.
I meant cover the topic to do it. If you recall, this has been a conversation in all the budget meetings. If you recall, the LRCIA, Lewis Rehoboth Canal Improvement Association, has dissolved. They were very instrumental in pushing this along and getting it to fruition. And the city did have some contribution to it. Lately, after the group dissolved, they gave us $8,000, citing that that would cover 2 years of maintenance at $4,000 each. The question came up of should we have a canal dock? Should we add a kayak launch to it to help with safety of getting kayaks up and down the ramp there? And I did go back to LRCIA, Pat Galuzzi, and asked her if she had done any research, and they had not done any research. I was trying to solicit if there were any particular companies they might have looked at or any pricing things. I did Google it, and you can make the darn thing for pretty cheap. It's just that you've got to deal with a very steep slope to deal with it. So, there are potential grants out there, CTF funds and other grants that we could pursue. So I guess what I would like to do is talk about this in terms of, do we want to pursue grants so that do we want to pursue a kayak launch such that we would pursue grants to pay for it free in entirety, or do we want to abandon the concept? Number one. Then the number two idea would be, I think we have some questions that were posed last time that you have a sheet on, I believe, Evan. So the kayak launch topic, what are your feelings about pursuing or putting it to rest? Commissioner Sharp.
Mayor, to me, this is a much bigger topic than the kayak launch. And the way I have been thinking it out, I think we ought to think about, in a very prudent way, the resources that we have available to us to actually dovetail off of Commissioner Bennett's comment, I believe, last time we met on this. And he brought up the issue of what are we going to do with this? That's the bottom line to me. What are we going to do with this supposed asset for the city? So we have an organization called Main Street who has an economic vitality, economic development, I believe, subcommittee And it's so aligned, I think, with their mission of how to determine what is economically viable and good ideas. I recall when this topic first came up, because yes, I was a commissioner at that time. The part of it was connected to revitalizing the west end of Rehoboth Avenue. And we talked a lot about, I recall, we've got the Bandstand at one end of Rehoboth Avenue. If we had a canal dock at the other end of Rehoboth Avenue, it might continue to draw visitors and residents there. So to me, I think, and what I'd like to recommend is that we charge Main Street with giving us a well-thought-out, forward-looking evaluation of the dock and its potential. I don't know if anyone else sees that.
I think that's a great idea, because part of their mission, as you mentioned, is economic vitality and development, and we don't seem to have the resources at the city to be out looking for somebody. And if they know of somebody that may be in another town that we could lease it to, or we could use it for recreation, and/or maybe we're unaware of a company that could actually provide a taxi service, which is a water taxi service, which was initially promised and a lot of people were looking forward to. But I think it's locating or identifying somebody who could do that. And I hadn't thought about Main Street, but I think that's a great idea.
I don't disagree. I think they could be a benefit to us, but I do want to put on the table that unlike one of our constituents that suggested we let it go dormant for 10 years and then tear it down, as I stipulated last time, we are obligated, and I think we need to maintain it. So that's at least the minimum that we can do at this point. Also, I want to let you know that the mayors plus myself are actively pursuing additional dredging of the canal. You know, we reached out to our congressional reps a year or so ago. We did secure funding for the initial dredging, but it only goes so many hundreds of yards and starting at Lewis coming this way. So it really doesn't do us any good at this point. But I just want to let you know that we are still seeking extra funds from different sources, because if we want to have a viable dock and provide a water taxi or the opportunity for a water taxi vendor there, then we certainly need to maintain it and maintain, if not dredge and deepen the canal to the design template. So just FYI there. So what we can do is have a conversation. I mean, we've got 2 or 3 commissioners in agreement right now. If we get more, we can certainly sit down with Main Street and see if they'd like to tackle that topic. And then I would definitely put a kayak launch on the very back burner. Commissioner Legree.
And indeed, Main Street has more, they're more suited to this than we are. And it's going to take numbers, so they should probably bring us numbers if they can get them, because we're going to be financing a lot of this. And also, Henlopen Acres wants to have dredging done. North Shore is going to need dredging done. I just found out that this new recreation center on the other side of the canal got the okay from planning and zoning. So there's going to be a lot of things coming on the canal, and I think it's worthwhile to keep pushing this.
Well, with Main Street having the canal dock in their backyard, maybe this is a good exercise for them, because I don't see it as a very simple idea. You know, for instance, the thought of a kayak launch there. Yeah, that would make it very easy, much easier to get down and up. It would also be a lot safer than having to carry a kayak down with it on your shoulders or head and potentially hitting people. But having said that, there's also the negative side, in that you're going to promote it and you're going to have more cars there, and more parking problems are going to crop up. So anyhow, okay with going forward with that?
Well, Mayor, I've got some comments.
Okay?
I
And we'll
think,
remember, you're the liaison for Main
I
Street.
am,
We
I
want
am.
to put that up front, okay?
I'm sure that Main Street would welcome that. I'll say that I have concerns about setting them up for failure. The dock is already something that's very controversial. And I just don't want to set them up for failure as an organization that's trying to bridge a gap between residents and businesses and the vitality of downtown. With me saying that, that's my personal thoughts. I'm sure they would welcome the challenge. But when you talk about, Commissioner Sharp, you talked about one of the goals was was to revitalize the west end of Rehoboth Avenue.
It was part of a discussion. I did not,
Discussion.
it was not a singular goal.
Okay.
The presentations at the time were very wide of taking cars off of Route 1, revitalizing the West End, and maybe this would give us a real opportunity. See, I view it as an opportunity to take an issue that, as in your words, is controversial. I don't really see it as controversial. I see it as an opportunity to determine what do we need to do together to make the expenditures of somewhere between $1.2 and $1.3 million of taxpayer funds, when you count city and state, that's not insignificant. So I think we have a huge opportunity here for the folks who are supposed to be, and I have every confidence that they could look at this in an objective way, not from a past experience, but moving forward of what are we going to do with it? What's the current evaluation of its usage? I mean, all the facets of putting a white paper together with just some ideas, recommendations, and possibly also to include challenges. I don't think we can be blind to the fact that the mayor brings up parking as something that's got to be considered. So to me, the bottom line is it's not setting up anyone for failure. It's setting up an opportunity for greater success. And I will resist with every bit of my verve if you try to set up the commissioners for failure. That's not going to happen either. So that's all I have
agree
to
with
say
you,
about this.
and I do think there's opportunity. I just want to be very clear. There were very vocal opponents of that dock, and I just don't want that. I don't want an organization taking on a project for it to reflect badly on them. That's my only point. But as soon as we were talking about upgrading and building out the third floor here, I immediately thought, well, wouldn't it be great if Main Street moved to the communications building where they were originally supposed to go and was part of all of the presentations that led to the referendum on funding this building? That would leave an opportunity for someone to lease that building from the city, like a kayak company, where they can store kayaks. They have an office to sell tickets or do whatever. So I too looked at, immediately thought of opportunities. And like I said, I'm sure that Main Street would welcome the challenge. But just like anything else, there's other projects that could have happened to revitalize the western part of Rehoboth Avenue. And the reality is that there is some mentality from some people that it's great, but not in my backyard. So I just,
Well, I don't
I know
want
that's
us-
going off
I don't
topic,
want
and I
us to
apologize.
Well,
deflect.
no, that's fine, but what I would say we do it, that is one commissioner's opinion, one commissioner that's a liaison. Why don't we approach them?
Yeah, absolutely.
And with the understanding that it's not moot that they will say yes, and let them make the determination whether they want to pursue this or not.
Absolutely.
I would certainly hope that an organization that we support in what we're looking at right now for our contributions would more than likely want to partner with the commissioners to make this a very well done, well thought out, multifaceted evaluation so that everybody wins. I can't imagine, I can't imagine them not saying yes to something that's really well suited, I think, for them. So thank you.
Thank you. So we have a suggested path forward. Are there any objections to pursuing that path forward? Commissioner Gossett?
No, I support the idea, but I would also ask that Commissioner Sharp, you just mentioned multifaceted, I think if it would be appropriate that a specific letter outlining our expectations of what we expect to receive back. So it's just not, we've got this thing, see what you could do with it, but some very specifics as to what our expectations of the resulting white paper or result are, so that we're not dealing with, you know, two opposite ends of the field here in that sense, so that we know what we expect, and maybe they find something completely different, but to go into it with possibly a letter from, joint letter from the mayor and the city manager saying, this is what we would anticipate, and perhaps, you know, we would like to see this within 6 months or whatever, give some type of check-in date at least, maybe not a conclusion to the report, but an update on a periodic basis as to what challenges they've met or what they've found or something of that nature. So it just doesn't linger.
I completely agree, and I will guarantee you it will not linger.
All right, thank you. Anybody else, any members of the public like to say anything on this topic? Seeing no hands, we'll go.
So one just other question and or request that the funds for the Canal Dock, are they spelled out any specific account within the budget?
They were all, so the revenue for the fundraising efforts, I believe they were accounted for in different accounts. I would have to go back and double check because we received them from a variety of different services, but we do not have a dedicated Canal Dock revenue account.
And I would request you investigate setting up a revenue and expense for the dock so that we can get some idea of what for future and not necessarily looking back. I mean, you've done a great report here of $1,360,000 of funds that were received and transferred to the city, an expense of $1,241,643. So again, for future, that we can track what we're spending and what revenue we would receive. Thank you.
Evan, am I correct that in that itemization, it did not include legal expenditures?
That would be correct.
Could we ask what the legal expenditures were on this project? I asked last time.
Yes, we can certainly look into that and see if we can pull those out. Yeah.
Actually, I would like to ask that you pull in all the old expenses that you can find relating to the dock, and that way we can take a look at it and just see how much we've got into this so far without having to ask you to go to various and sundry accounts to dig them out.
Yeah, there were, I know there were site plan review and investigation of the stability of the canal dock or canal bank itself. If I remember, those costs were like $30,000 to $45,000.
Okay.
You mean, are you?
No, I voted for 50,000.
Engineering, geotechnical engineering, and all those costs. Yeah, they don't seem to be captured on here as expenses. So what we're hearing from some of the commissioners is there are a couple voids here in this inventory that need to be updated.
This may be a way for Main Street to come out of their location and get a brand new spanking nice location.
Any other offering on the inventory there, Evan or commissioners? That's up on the board. Okay, so we'll bring this back again. Doesn't necessarily have to be at a budget meeting, but I think we're all very curious about the total costs. So we need to look a little deeper into the archives for geotechnical engineering, some of the other engineering, other costs, legal costs, et cetera. Any further comment before I close this out? All righty, thank you very much. With that, we'll go to contributions. I don't know that there were any straggling questions, but I put this on in case we wanted to be able to discuss anything further.
I have one.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
I don't mean to monopolize, but I believe part of the support documents now show a resolution from the library that I was shocked to see and disappointed to have just met with our library friends not 2 weeks ago to see that as a support document. So that's the question I have.
Yeah, there is a support document that I guess basically is a resolution from the Board of Directors of the Public Library. They did meet separate from this budget sessions with the city manager and assistant city manager to tell them of their plans that have been formalized in a favorable vote by the board to essentially move out of town, but if possible, retain a smaller, different space in town. Tom, or do either of you want to, I won't put you on the spot, but we'll give you the opportunity if you want to rationalize what you did or what you're going to do so that we have better information. That would be appreciated. Just reintroduce yourself if you would, Tom.
My name is Tom Wontorek, and I'm the president of the library board. And the resolution that the board adopted was primarily to address what the direction is that the board is pursuing. While we have a large service area, the library is in one far end of it up here where we've operated for 50 years, and we intend to stay here. But we also have a need to try to service the people further south in the other part of our service area. So the purpose of the resolution was, in a way, to address the questions that people probably have and to indicate what direction the board is going. We talk about having a facility outside because we did a study of the existing library building. They found that, yes, we could make some additions to it, but we are still handicapped because of issues of congestion getting in, parking spaces, and program spaces that we don't have as much as we would like in the building we have. So as a result, we started looking for a larger facility elsewhere in our service area. We are close to getting some resolution of this, but we don't know exactly yet when that will occur. But the purpose of this is to say, well, we can have a facility elsewhere in our service area that will provide enough parking and program space for everybody and still have a downtown library, because we know that there are at least 3,000 property owners, according to the census, who are within 2 miles of the library who live here full-time. In addition, a lot of people own buildings in our 2-mile area. They may be their second home, they live elsewhere, come here weekends, vacations, what have you. And there are others who own a second building in town, a house, but don't plan on using it. They rent it out as an income-producing facility. But they still have people who come here to visit. And that is not even counting the hotels where people come in, stay in the hotels for a week or 2 weeks, and certainly during this time period, having the library accessible to them is important. So while we have a core of 3,000 people who live here full-time within 2 miles, there are probably 5,000 or 6,000 total when we add all these other people who come and go at different times. So basically what we want to do is have a downtown facility that will meet the service and programming needs of those people who are in town who want to use this library and will not have to commute to a facility further away. The key thing is that we didn't want to have to just shift who's commuting back and forth on the highways. We want to be able to service most people. If indeed there's a large program that we can't accommodate in the building, then we would look at, they may have to travel down to the other site for that program. We're also interested in just what we do with our existing building. It has some problems. It needs to be worked on. We're interested what involvement the city has, whether or not you might be interested in sharing the space if it was worked on. In addition, we became aware that the senior center right behind the library is planning to relocate to outside of town. That's a city building. If that was available to the library, we'd certainly look at that as a way to add to the downtown facility. So that's in a nutshell what we try to accomplish in this resolution.
Thank you, Tom. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but any question you want to follow up? Anything, Commissioner Sharp
I do
first?
just briefly. I have no quarrel with the way you're looking at the future, and that's all good. My only question is, in retrospect, do you think it might have been a better framing for you to have mentioned that to us on February 6th? I guess because I'm guessing, I'm just assuming, and please set me on the right track if I've got it wrong, that this was already in the workings of the board.
I saw the budget meeting as strictly funding for the year to year. I alluded to the fact that we're looking at the future. There were no responses to that. I could have gotten into that sort of thing, but I didn't want to document or occupy a lot of time talking about our future while I realized that this was strictly a one-year budget number. It'll be probably 3 or 4 years before any of this stuff is materialized. And in the meantime, we'd like to find out what we can do with our building and how we can work with the city to accommodate and still provide a viable place in town that we can meet the needs of the people who are within 2 to 3 miles of the downtown area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Legree?
How old is the present facility? I think I remember when you built that.
It was added to in 2008, I believe. 2000, I believe. And when we did the study was completed in 2019. And we were looking, we would add about 3,000 square feet to the space. But even if we added that, we'd do that by closing in the outside courtyard. But even if we did that, we found that we still had problems in parking, program space, and various other things. So that's when we started looking for alternate sites to build a larger building, but still we want to be a viable center in town. Again, I commented about the New England Town Center, church, the library, etc.
As I read your resolution, it seemed like congestion was a real big part of it. And I was trying to think how you were going to solve that with your satellite facility and 4.8 miles out. I can't remember the numbers. And I'm just trying to get this through my head, what's going on here. And yeah, there are always institutions, facilities looking for more space. So I suspect that that there would be opportunities there for somebody. But yeah, thank you.
Well, part of what makes a community, for me, is a library. So I definitely would be interested in a library staying in town. Now, to make it your pending move a little more palatable, to indicate that you might search out other locations would be very nice and sweeten the sourness a little bit. But in the meantime, I want to help keep the library viable. So I will definitely be entertaining funding again in this year's budget. But thank you. You need to come up, come into the microphone and state your name and your relationship, and then.
I'm Tucker Koch, John, and Tom and I kind of, every couple of years we swap roles, treasurer and president. So I've been on the board for about 12 years now, and heavily involved from the beginning. What we are trying to do is address a population that we have not been addressing in the past. Our service area is 16,000 people. As Tom mentioned, about 3,000 of them are within reasonable commuting area of the current site. we have not been servicing the other 13,000 people. They rarely come into town. In fact, those who are out Route 24, for example, it's easier for them to go to Lewis than to Rehoboth. So we have identified a site that will better enable us to service the rest of our service area. And it's not trying to maintain a facility downtown. The resolution says we are going to have a facility downtown. It will not be probably the size of the existing one. In fact, we don't know for sure what size it will be. We don't know where it will be. And I talked to the mayor briefly before the meeting started that we're far enough along now that we want to start having discussions with the city on what could work, what would be good for the city and for the library, and we solve how to best serve the 3,000 people and the tourists that will be downtown. That's what we're trying to do. It's not like we got a vague idea. We are very, very clear on what we want to do, and we're probably 90% of the way there and securing the property that we need outside of town to do that. And then, once we've done that, we will start discussions, serious discussions with the city on, okay, here's our building, here's what we understand our needs will be, what do you have that we should be considering? Do you have any ideas? And just brainstorm what's best for the city and the library combined downtown, because we will be here, we will remain here. Just, we're now going to be better serving the rest of the other 13,000 people in our service area. Does that help clarify any?
Have you been talking to the folks over in Lewis at the Lewis Library? You know, they have a new library, and it's a very spacious and gracious facility. Are they with you on this, or how does that work?
You know, if you go back when we started on this, 5 years ago, I'm not sure when we originally made the needs assessment, we on the board had blinders on. We said it's downtown. We're going to be downtown. In fact, we set up a meeting with the Lewis board and the staff and talked about their plans, and they basically said, we think you need to take the blinders off and look at a much larger facility and in fact, help us meet the needs of the population, because all of our residents, our service people downtown even, go to the new Lewis Library. So we're totally aligned with them. And we're going to take advantage of everything they've learned in building their new facility when we build ours. So yes, we've talked with them extensively.
I appreciate the intent of remaining downtown, but what I'm really curious about is the reality of that. Are you able to secure a new location without selling your existing building?
Well, it's kind of, the answer to that question is how much capital funding can we achieve? And I don't know the answer to that. The easiest way to do it is to sell the current facility. But we are going to go outside of town one way or another. So, you know, we could be a landlord downtown for that matter in the current facility. We don't know. And that's the reason we want to have a meeting with the city, to see if there's some way that we can work together and make this work.
So help me with your previous statement, because I'm trying to put a fine point on this in my head. When you say we will be here, that was a very helpful statement. But now I'm hearing some, is this an ironclad statement?
There's no equivocation on that. We will be downtown. I just can't tell you, will it be the current facility, part of the current facility, a completely new location? I don't know. Once we had secured the site outside of town, and we're within days of doing that, then we can say, okay, now we know we're going to build outside of town. What do we do in town? Because we will be here.
If I can step in also. In the resolution, item 4, I'll just read part of it, is to construct, lease, or maintain an appropriately sized city library within the city to meet the needs of those living within 2 miles. The idea of retaining or constructing, lease, or maintain, if we could lease a facility that we could stay in, then that would be a possibility. We could construct a new one, which would involve selling the existing property, the 3 lots that's on it, and the building, but then we'd have to pay some money to get a new site adequately larger than what we have now, or at least as far as being able to program space. or we're looking at the possibility of either renovating the space and then leasing it, selling it to somebody, leasing back space, seeing if the city has any interest, if there's any kind of back and forth that we have, if the city has some additional lots that might be available that we could use, and certainly can we utilize all or part of the senior center. And I realize that from our discussion that there may not be as-built plans for the senior center, but we can, if allowed, we can certainly go in there, take a look at it and see how that could be facilitating our staying at the current location. But we realize that if we sell, we're going to have to acquire some other property in town, which again is going to be expensive.
Tom, are you able to share how much you have raised in your capital campaign?
Well, we haven't really, the monies that we've received, if you're familiar with the, excuse me, the Delaware Library Construction Program is one that fully funds the studies of what needs to be done to make the library useful for the next 20 or 30 years. It's 100% funded by the state. Once that study is done, the planning and construction will be funded 50% by the state. So we have that money available to us once we move along. We also are recipient of a $3 million federal grant that has to be used by the end of December 2026.
What was that amount?
$3 million. And that can be the local match to the state funds. So we have at least the 50% state funding, and we have the $3 million from the federal government.
So I completely understand from your perspective, the board, why you're looking to service your entire service area. But I'll be honest, receiving this was shocking. And I love that the intent is to maintain a location downtown, but I'm scared that in reality that will not happen, and that's not on you for whatever reason. I'm scared as a commissioner that our downtown is losing things that make it a downtown, and we have to do everything in our power to jump over backwards to maintain these things. We're already losing a theater. We've lost a pharmacy. I don't want to lose anything else that, as you say, makes it a New England town square downtown. So I'm worried about the reality at the end of the day if there is a library that remains downtown.
I agree fully. We want to have a library in town that will meet the needs. We looked at some individual lots, but certainly given the property ownership and leasing from a private property owner, I'm not too keen about doing that. But if the city and the library can work together, we're certainly willing to do that. But we have a variety of things we're looking at, whether or not to retain the buildings, try to renovate them, try to work with another property owner who could come in and lease or own, and we could lease back from them some of the space. So we want to be, I love the place that it's at now. We have problems with that, and we have to try to address those problems.
Well, thank you for sharing all of this with us.
Let me make one other comment on that, and that is, I have a much higher degree of confidence than you do, perhaps, that we'll be downtown. One of the decisions we also made is when we go out on a capital campaign, our campaign will include the cost of the new site as well as whatever we do downtown. It'll be one campaign, one major campaign to handle both sites. So I don't know how we can state it any more strongly.
Yeah,
we will be downtown.
I do appreciate that. I do. Thank you.
Commissioner LeGreg, can we
The thing that
bring this to a close soon? Go ahead.
correct me if I'm wrong, the concept that I'm leaving this meeting with is that your number one objective is to get out of town, and your number two objective, which is almost as strong, is to remain here with some facility. Have I missed
Our
it?
number one objective is to satisfy the needs of the entire service area and the downtown.
Okay,
There is no 1 and 2.
that reinforces my statement. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, again, I was very disappointed to learn of the resolution that was done in January and then coming for funding when you did last week. It just seemed poor timing. And then also to discover or be informed that you received your needs assessment study that was completed in August of 2019, which is 3.5 years ago. We had no knowledge of that whatsoever, so that any of this was even in the planning. So I think working with the city should have started 3 years ago at least, to stay a presence in the city and somewhere out. You talk about meeting the needs of your, what is the phrase you use?
It's called service area.
Service area. Well, your service area includes Rehoboth, but it includes a large area. I parallel that to what we are doing with the fire department in the sense that we're currently, they've asked for $150,000, and the majority of their service area is completely out of Rehoboth Beach. They receive $1,000 from North Shores and $2,000 from Dewey for funding for services. So I just see this kind of snowballing in the sense of what is expected of the city of Rehoboth Beach to supply the service area for these other organizations and the rest of the county. And it's troubling to me. I certainly support the library and always have and want to see a presence in town, but we come down to needs and wants, and I think those are two different things, and we all want to keep a library presence in town, but it comes down to finances. And I don't know, you're not at liberty to release exactly what your deal is out of town or the land you say in a couple days or what have you. It's difficult for me to make a decision on funding of your request right now until we have some more information and what is the plan. It's in essence a bank making a loan to someone. You've got to have collateral and you've got to have what's going on, and that's how I would approach this, in the sense that it is, Commissioner Chernowski said, the library is certainly a part of what makes up a town and do everything to keep it here, but it comes down to needs versus wants and factual aspects of what's available to stay in town. So I'm just, before I can really honestly make a decision on funding requests, I have to have some more information of what's going down. What are your further plans?
Well,
And I also look at,
go ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead.
the situation that occurred several years ago now in Lewis, where, the property that was donated to the library was in the memorandum of understanding or whatever the relationship was, that a presence of the library. Well, they kept a small little lending library of 6 books out there where the Walgreens is. So, I mean, there are, investment individuals that manage to work around these needs and wants of people, and I don't want that to happen in Rehoboth again, because we've had it worked out well in Lewis in the end, but it took a very long time to get there. So I'm very supportive of the library, but with the current information that we have been provided, I don't feel as if I can make a determination on funding. Thank you.
Well, I'm on a different wavelength because I do have enough information, and as I said earlier, I would be supportive, will be supportive of funding to keep you going at least this year, and then see where we go further. Did you have?
I have one question without,
Excuse me, could I respond to the last
Sure.
point? A couple of things. We haven't broadly shared our plan because we hadn't put a plan in place yet. And we still don't have the plan. What we have is now glimmers of what the plan's going to look like. We had a needs assessment in 2009. We went for at least a solid year with the concept of let's build something, let's improve and expand our current facility, period. That's what we were doing. In fact, we had some conceptual designs of what that would look like. We spent a lot of design money doing that. Part of Lewis's influence on us was getting us to think more about a larger facility and not in downtown, because no matter how big we build the facility downtown, we still have over 2/3 roughly of the service area that won't come down to it. They'll go to Lewis because it's easier, okay? So we haven't shared a plan because we haven't had a plan to share until recently. And we got that memorandum of understanding or whatever it was, we got that set out because as soon as we could, as soon as we had enough information, that it made sense to do that. We have also had, I don't know, 3 or 4 meetings since 2009 with the mayor then, and we've had a meeting with the current mayor and city and the administrator, 4 times since then, letting them know where we are in the process. And that changed originally from doing something downtown to, well, now we got 3 options: downtown, out of town, and a combination of both. And that's kind of the one we kept going with. And not until recently have we been able to state with a high degree of certainty that our plan is build a site out of town, maintain some site somewhere in the 3,000 to 5,000 square feet at least downtown to service the needs of Rehoboth. And that is our plan. We couldn't share it to you any sooner than we had it.
Thank you. Commissioner Bennett?
Yeah, I had one question. Without divulging what land you're looking at, will it be in the county? It will be in the county, but will it be in Rehoboth?
When you say in Rehoboth, it'll be outside the city limits.
Right, but there's people that live in the county that consider themselves in Rehoboth.
Then the answer is yes, it'll be in Rehoboth.
Okay, so it's
If
not
you
going.
broadly define it, see,
So you're not going. You're not going to Dewey. You're not going.
Oh, no. Our service area goes from downtown up Route 1 to Route 24, and it goes west to include everything out south of 24. What is that, Lands End, or not Lands End, but Angola, that area. That's our service area, okay? It'll be in the service area.
Okay.
Can you, just to be clear, did you just say that your plans were known to several mayors and city managers?
No. What I said is we've had several meetings with mayors and city managers to tell them where we are. But early on, our plan at that point was stay downtown. Then it became, well, we got 3 options. And then more recently, it's become, this is looking clear now. We're going to build a facility outside of town, and we're going to maintain some other facility different from what we have right now, maybe less of the existing building or a different location, but it'll be downtown. And that was only recently that information was shared, because only recently we put that plan together.
Understood, thank you.
You look puzzled by that. I don't know if
No, and it has nothing to do with you, but if these conversations were being had with city staff and administrations, that building isn't working for you and you're looking at options, that information has never been communicated to this body. That's not on you. That's a whole other issue for me.
Well, in fairness, I don't think we shared anything with a degree of certainty that it was worth sharing with anybody else. We're just saying, here's kind of where we are. This is what we're thinking about.
Understood, thank you.
I feel I'm ready to be pounced on. Let's make sure that I have not had any formal meetings with you. You
That's
did
right.
have them with the city manager.
I was not.
Did you hear that? Well, make sure you heard that. Okay.
It wasn't about you.
Thank you very much.
You're turning red.
Anything else from up here? Again, we thank you very much. I think I think you could get the flavor of our reception of this information, but we appreciate you coming here again today.
And again, we want to continue the dialogue with the city to see just how we can collaboratively work on having a facility downtown as well as something out of town.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Both of you. Thank you very much. With that, let's take a 10-second breather here. We still have, Evan, before you leave, we've got for the commissioners, the fire company, Main Street, the museum, if we want to bring up anything from the past on those. We've also got on page 53 of your support documents,
Is it just me? I don't have.
Was there anything that changed from this in-kind document from the last time? No. So this is reiterative. We probably won't, I don't know that we need to put it on again, but So that's the same information. Is there anything else anybody would like to offer about contributions? Patrick, I know you, at the last meeting, had mentioned the potential to create a funding policy relative to contributing contributions. Is that something that you want to bring forward?
Yeah, at the next budget meeting, I'll bring it forward with the specifics.
Okay, so we'll introduce that at the next budget meeting as an introductory discussion on creating or developing a policy with respect to who comes before us seeking contributions.
But just prerequisites of what we would desire in that regard. Application type of information of how we best serve our citizens.
All right, very good. Thank you very much.
I have one question
yes.
on this page. I think someone asked at the last meeting to include the Chamber of Commerce and what the in-kind value of the subsidized rent, I think. Did someone ask
Yeah,
that?
so-
I did,
yeah,
and I
the
thought it
value
was
of their
already-
rent, I guess.
I thought it was already added, Evan.
Yes, at the last meeting, I know that I had mentioned the rent payments that we receive. I have to go back and pull those up again, but I can certainly mention that again. So the chamber occupies, again, the building 306 Rehoboth Avenue. We have a 10-year agreement with them, and they pay rent in equal quarterly installments of $10,600. That was for 2022, total cost $42,400. They also are responsible for maintenance, interior maintenance, as well as utilities. They carry insurance on the building and its fixtures, and they have a public liability insurance policy of $1 million. City is responsible for exterior maintenance of the facility, as well as any landscaping, and then snow plowing as well.
Yeah, and Evan, I apologize. You did mention that at the last meeting. I just thought it was going to be put on this sheet in terms of what the actual market value of that lease would be versus what they're paying.
Well, I'm
to
not
show
sure
an
the
in-kind.
prudence of that, because this is specifically relative to those that we give contributions to. And I really don't want to complicate it or confuse the public or us in putting with the chamber on there. I think it's nice to know, and this is not necessarily the whole story, 10,600 quarterly for it. Part of the question might be, what is the current value of rent there? Because they are getting a discount, and when I don't think I was on board. I was probably on board then, because I've been around a while. But I think one of the rationales for giving them a sweet deal, if you will, was that we know who they are, and we know they're going to pay rent on time, and they provide a benefit to the city. But anyhow, I don't think it wise to put it on this sheet.
Yeah, I understand, and I agree with you, Mayor. I guess what I was just what I would like to have a full picture of is all of the city's assets, how they're being utilized or not utilized, what value they are. Like my understanding was the railroad building, that lease was up, and I think they're paying $1 a year. And I have no idea how that building is being used. So for me, I would like to see all of the city's assets and know how they're being used, what revenue they're bringing in or not bringing in, and just have a clear picture of everything holistically.
And I
agree, this
and
is
I
not
think
the
that
right
can be a
spot for
future discussion. I don't know that it needs to be a part of this budget year, so I don't want it to hold up anything.
Understood.
But I agree that that can be a map of our assets and.
And I brought up the chamber when Evan was so kind to, and Bert, to tell us again how much they're paying, because I do recall, Mayor, and you were on the commission when we met in the fire hall, and I was the only commissioner who was not supportive, and I'll be very upfront about that, I was not supportive of giving them a lease for 10 years at $40,000 when the market value of that building, as we were told, was $80,000. So it was a 50% decrease, and I was just not in favor of it at the time. And I would suspect that market value may be higher now. But I didn't intend that any of that got in the way of our budget. It's just that a 10-year lease that we've been in now since we were in the fire hall, in a few years, it goes to the bigger discussion that maybe we'll have, that in a few years, that lease is going to be up for renegotiation, and I think we have a path forward that maybe it would be a good opportunity, different meeting, different agenda, to look at the full scale.
Yeah. And I just want to be clear, I'm not picking on the chamber, and I'm not saying whether they're valued to have subsidized rent or not. It was the closest example that I could think of is having a big picture of our assets and how they're being utilized and valued.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioner LeGree?
Evan, I might have missed this and not heard it when you mentioned it. What does the chamber pay for the railroad building?
I do not have that information. I would have to.
Thank you.
Pull the contract, yep.
Just one other, if you could, for completion on this, so we have it for apples to apples. On Historical Society, you indicate a rental value of 4,000 square foot at $10 a square foot, which is a great deal, at 40,000. But could we also equate that similar application to Main Street? Thank you.
Any members of the public want to say anything? What we got there? Any further comment from the commissioners relative to any of the contributions programs?
Also, Evan, I think the public needs to know that the library has clear title to that building, and they don't rent that. So we do nothing for them except for 1302 for water.
All right. Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to some of the city departments. Evan?
Thank you, Mayor. So we will start, if you don't mind, with the police department, and we'll proceed how the agenda lays out each department. So we'll start with the police department. My preference would then be to talk about the dispatch center and then proceed with beach patrol, only because that is how the support document is formatted. So we'll start with the police department. That department starts on page 14. It also includes page 15.
Wait.
Uh, 14
I need to look
of
at the
the
little page
smaller,
number at the
yes,
bottom.
yes.
Okay. This will actually be page 26 of 56 of our support documents, but we're utilizing the numbering at the bottom of the actual budget there. Okay.
correct, Mayor.
Page 14 starts the police department there. Thank you,
Yes.
Evan.
Sure. And I'll just make mention of a few accounts, and then certainly if you have any questions, Chief is here to assist with answering those questions. First, account 503-900, uniforms. So in addition to our standard uniform budget, we also have budgeted for 2 new hire uniforms that will need to be purchased. So that is the reason behind the slight increase to the uniform budget. Next, line 504-950 is housing allowance. You'll see we have budgeted $18,000 there. This past summer, we had, and I know this is later on the agenda, but we had 3 cadets that took advantage of that housing allowance. That was a total of $6,000 that the city paid directly to the landlord or to the real estate agent for their housing. We do certainly anticipate more taking advantage of that program if we continue to offer that. Next, account 506-500 is minor equipment and supplies. You've seen that has increased about $24,000. That is for rifle replacements. A total of 8 rifles to be replaced at a cost of $3,000 each. Again, $24,000 for those replacements.
Take that line number again, Evan, please.
506-500, minor equipment and supplies.
506-500, all right, thank you.
What's the life of a rifle? I mean, how long do these?
We usually anticipate taking these rifles out between 8 and 10 years, and we're at that mark now, yes.
Just the other two accounts I wanted to make mention of are on the next page. Account 909-420 is police new car. This is the cost associated with the equipment and the installation for new police vehicles. And the capital outlay account, that's 990000, 214,000. That is for 3 new police vehicles. We had 3 vehicles in the current budget that we had ordered through Enterprise. We were notified that those orders were canceled. I believe it was because of an issue with the manufacturer. So we now are rebudgeting for those expenses. Again, that is 3 new police vehicles in the upcoming fiscal year.
And Evan, if I recall, our budget number 4 meeting, March 6th, we're going to fully
That's correct.
delve into the CIP.
Yes,
So
yes.
you're just kind of giving us a preview here.
Correct. And also included in that capital outlay account are computer replacements as well.
So, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, are we leasing or buying the vehicles?
Buying.
Okay, so the auto lease is out.
Yes. Well, the auto lease, so we have existing vehicles that we have lease arrangements with, so that cost is associated with the existing fleet that are on that lease program.
So, during CIP, can you give us a breakout of vehicles as leased versus owned? And
Sure.
replaced? Thank you.
We can do that.
And we're going to continue with that program.
We are working on the decision matrix for that particular program, because currently we're at the 5-year mark. That's the true decision point when you can start seeing the benefit of a lease program come to fruition, when you start taking some of those vehicles that are at the 5-year mark, they go for resale, and that then gets reinvested in lowering your overall rate for the month. We are at a decision point right now to whether to continue on with the lease program or to move forward in a purchase or go back to a purchase program. I've got due outs to both the fleet manager, Chief and I are working together, Evan. So in the next couple of weeks, we have to put that information together to truly make a decision. And I don't know what that's going to yield. So we're still in fact-finding mode, gathering information.
So
Enterprise still owes us information as well.
So you're saying that a decision hasn't been made, but you're budgeting that we go.
I think we
in the
have to
direction of
budget. It's
purchase.
prudent to move forward with that in that manner.
Okay. And can I just ask, why do you have 1 police new car outlined by itself, and then the other 3 are in the capital improvement plan?
That's, yeah, so it's an existing account, the police new car, so that was typically where I think we had accounted for any equipment. We do, obviously, lettering on those vehicles, so it's labeled as police new car, but it's for the equipment installation, all the upfitting associated with that new
So
vehicle.
there's only 3 new vehicles.
3 new
and
vehicles.
The 63,400 is to outfit them.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm really glad to see us making those decisions. It's a good move to rethink that. Thank you.
That was everything that I wanted to highlight with the police department. Certainly, if there are any questions, we're here to answer those questions.
I have a question.
Commissioner Bennett, go ahead.
On line 3, I guess it's 501-700, the part-time salaries.
Let us get there. 501,
It's the part-time salaries, the third down, 501-700. I just had a quick question. Chief, when you were in last time, you talked about, is that the seasonal cadets?
That is the seasonal cadets,
And
yes.
I know that we were discussing that how competitive it was out there to recruit. Did we have to go up to, I know we were pushing maybe $20 an hour, or
We had $17 in 2022 last year's budget. For this year, we got $17.50.
17,
So we did
17.
increase 50. So we increased it 50%, 50 cents, and we are competitive in the surrounding areas,
Thank you.
Plus the housing allowance.
plus the housing allowance.
And how many cadets does that equate to?
We authorized to hire 26 cadets each year.
Okay, and how many did we have last year?
It was around, I don't have a number right in front of me. It was like, we were down. It was like, started out at 21, and then it went down to like 19 quickly.
And I've got a couple more questions, if you don't mind. This one's for Evan. And you may have already addressed this, and I just don't remember. I noticed under medical insurance, which is 502, 500, this is a large number, so it stuck out at me. Is our medical premiums going up 17%? Is that accurate?
I will have to defer to Bert on that question.
I don't think they're going to go up. We don't really know because the cycle is July 1 through July 1.
Okay.
Through June 30th.
But we're budgeting for a 17% increase across the board?
Well, I think the way we budget that, we're looking at each individual, our HR director has been working on this. And so, yes, I think that the way that number was arrived at was looking at each person and see what kind of plan they're on, because the city pays part of the family plans and they pay part of the spouse plans.
Okay.
So I think that's a pretty accurate number because
Okay.
we're looking at what the people actually have. And is it 17%? Yeah, if you just look at the difference between the two budget years, it is, but I think that there could be more consumption,
Right.
more people on different arrangements.
Thanks for that. And under uniforms, you said that amount is higher because it includes 2 new uniforms. Are those 2 new bodies that you're adding, or are they replacements? for
Replacement,
vacancies?
2 that have left.
And this is a broad question. This past year, enforcement, or lack thereof, has been almost every meeting we're talking about it. Do you have enough officers to adequately police and enforce the laws in our city?
I plan on putting together and trying to come up with some funding to look at a study for a manpower study to equate that this upcoming year through grant funding. Because with our special events, not just with enforcement, but special events, and I'm getting a group of senior officers, been here for many times, that many in the next few years are eligible for retirement. So we're going to have to take a look at that too.
All right, thank you.
I think that's a tough question. Do we have enough officers to enforce?
But I think the
no,
question is fair.
Because my level of enforcement might be different than yours, and then if we start enforcing anything too deep, then our constituents get mad. It's just kind of a sticky wicket. Now, I would say, for instance, I would like to see more enforcement in B&L. I'm going around and on weekends and surveying, so I hope, at one point we can talk about that. But it's just, it's a good point. It's just, I don't think it can be answered in 5 minutes.
I think the enforcement word may have not been accurate. It's just to meet the needs of our community. And like I said, there's a lot of different facets that the police department, the communication center gives to the general public.
And I think a lot of the enforcement concerns that we've talked about in the past year, it's things like, and I witnessed it many, many times, people making illegal left turns off Rehoboth Avenue, and things like that. More traffic-related stuff, that if you had enough seasonal cadets, which with more of a housing allowance, maybe we will get more this year, you'll be able to address things like that, perhaps. Having more cadets on those, in the median, on Rehoboth Avenue, on the sides, monitoring that type of stuff, so. It's something that has come up a lot, and I think it's fair to ask the question. Even though I know the answer is not simple and.
Yes, sir. Jay, you had something, and then Tony, I think?
Bert just brought something else to my mind, and I remember last year when we were trying to get city manager to just do anything she could think of to incentivize housing allowance or raising their salaries. And Bert just brought up something that I hadn't thought about. We have other perks that we can offer these people. He was talking about medical insurance that we provide to their family, but there are probably lots of other things. We just need to really think hard and do that. Get good people in.
I'd like to interject something in here real quick. We've got a topic down here, seasonal employee incentives, and I don't know 100% what that is, but I would like to offer the following. If you recall, we had Chief Banks at a meeting some time ago, and he explained that for his officers, he had 3 officers. He gave us an example that among 3 of them spent $7,000 each, $21,000 for accommodations in Millsboro, which could be what, up to an hour drive here, an hour drive back. And I think it shocked all of us. So Jay, I said, you in particular, I think were very vocal about, wow, something needs to be done about this. And so about that time, I think Lawrence came on board, and I expressed a desire to both Evan and Lawrence to examine this issue a little further. What can we do? And I showed him a couple hotels that were for sale. It's like, wouldn't that be interesting? Because I thought they've got to be close by, and this could be an opportunity. And one of the responses from one of them was, "Do we really want to be a landlord?" ? I thought that was an excellent question. Then I pointed out some other buildings in town that maybe we could buy or we own or could be converted or could be public-private partnerships or something like that. But it all depends on where you want to go. So in the meantime, with Lawrence on board, I set up a meeting with Ocean City Mayor and City Manager, his Public Works Director, and others to sit down there, because there had been an article in the paper that kind of mentioned or intimated that they might be looking at the workforce housing, and that maybe that workforce housing would include dormitory-style living, perhaps, versus apartment living, et cetera. So we got together, and I'll let them convey what came out of that meeting. But why I'm mentioning is because we're in each of these categories, I guess, with the police and the beach patrol, and maybe probably not dispatch, but there could be a component there of this last item, seasonal employee incentives. So be patient, and we'll get to that at some point at this meeting. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to just point that forward. Jay, did you have anything else you wanted to finish on police and subsidizing housing or?
No, I'm fine. I'm glad to know you're working it.
Yeah.
It's great. I think that's what we need to do.
And I think is that your intent of this one on here, to talk about that a little further? Seasonal employee incentives?
We're going to give a review and rundown of the current seasonal employee incentives that we are having, what we used last time as well.
Okay, so you may not, they may not be to the point where want to discuss dormitory living and housing and all that kind of thing.
I just need to know we're doing it.
Yeah. And whatever questions that we have that the institutional knowledge, man, Evan can't answer because he had to go on a personal matter. I'll take those questions, and I'll circle back around with you specifically to answer those questions and CC the other commissioners and present those as maybe a supporting document embedded after the fact. Some of those answers.
All right, thank you very much.
I just wanna
Anything else on police?
just to clarify, I just was looking at the increase from the prior year. I come up with 14% increase on that.
Medical?
On the medical.
Did you recall in the old days, we used to have the city manager used to have a cover sheet that I thought was very useful, because not just for us, but for the public, and had things, I think, like, this year I'm presenting a balanced budget. Some of the changes from this year to last year include medical expenses going up 14% and things like that. Then they've discontinued doing that, and I think that would be something to consider, possibly putting back. This cover sheet, again, I think helps us, but it helps the public understand why things are going up so astronomically.
We have a one-pager that I keep on my desk on this health insurance. And just for clarification, if you have one new officer or somebody's just changed his plan around, let's say he's gone to a family plan, he got, I mean, you can be talking about a $12,000, $13,000 increase. So those percentages, I understand where you were going with that. Is health insurance really going up that much? I usually figure about 5 or 6% increase. And in recent years, it really hasn't been that much. We were lucky, I think last year it went up about that. But that includes not only the increases in the premiums, but new employees or a change in the medical
Oh, yeah,
plan.
sure. A single person going to a spouse, going to a family, that's going to have a dramatic impact. Yeah,
That's
for sure.
right. So,
For sure.
so the plan is through the state, and we have two plans. Most people use the Highmark Blue Cross, but Aetna is an option. In some cases, people select that plan.
And just to reiterate, the public, our constituents see the budget go up. We see the budget go up almost annually. And that's why I think that cover sheet would be helpful to explain that, hey, it's going up for a reason, folks. And there's some of the reasons that we are able to control. So anyhow, I throw that out there.
Mayor, one other question, if I may.
Yes.
What's the status of our certification of the police department?
CALEA, with the CALEA and state accreditation, we continue to move forward on. It's not been as quickly as I've wanted to see it completed. Many different reasons. The biggest thing is all the special events, and that's why we need to get back about man hours as far as reshifting who can work on it full time. And we actually just had a meeting yesterday, as a matter of fact, about this. And this afternoon, we're supposed to be meeting with someone from the state to help us get back on track to move that forward. And I think it is reasonable within the next 12 to 18 months to have the state, and then we'll move forward with the CALEA.
Thank you. And what is the current term of this current contract year-wise?
With collective bargaining contract, we are in year 2 of 3.
2 or 3, okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything else from the commissioners on the police? Welcome, Bunky. We note that you arrived at 10:29. Thank you for being here today. Anybody else up here? Any members? Oh, we've lost our public, so there are no questions from the public. With that, Lawrence will go to, or Evan indicated he wanted to go to dispatch next?
Communications, yes. Or dispatch, yes. Dispatch.
Dispatch, which is page 21.
Page 21, which is
33.
Page 33 of 56 of the support documents. All right, Chief, go. Or Lawrence, go ahead.
Some major, just going to touch on some of the highlights real quick. If you look at overtime, 501,500, that increase right now, likely increase continuing to monitor this based off of prior year's expenditure. That's about right?
Correct. Overtime, how the dispatchers work, they do 4 days on, 4 days off. So there is, out of every 2-week pay period, there's almost a built-in overtime for that, and holidays is where it comes in at. And we've been short-staffed. In the budget, you'll see that we're looking for 3 dispatchers, and therefore that's part of the increase of overtime too, to get the appropriate staffing levels.
Moving down to line 503,900 uniforms. This is a 1 footnote: replacement uniforms, Class A uniforms, and uniforms for new hires. We are capable of using some of the 911 funds for these uniforms, but that is an increase that we are budgeting for. Moving down to 515,000 travel expense. That really, the highlights for that one, we are looking to send individuals to the Tyler Technologies Conference, Navigator Conference, and Association of Public Safety Communications Officials Conference. So continuing education, professional development, training, definitely key points where I want to make sure that the departments have that in the forefront of their mind. And obviously, Chief has that one well in hand.
And a correct, thank you for that. And I would just say that a lot of that monies can be used out of 911 budget line items that we have. have, as well as through E91 through the state. We meet monthly, and some of these things are paid for by them, or at least the conference itself. We might have to pay for the travel and the lodging, but they'll pay for the conference. So we utilize all aspects when we can.
Very good.
City Manager, I'm sorry, I stepped out for just 1 second to use the restroom. Can you repeat salaries and overtime?
Going back up to
501.
line 50100. Obviously, that is I had no major notes on that one for 23-20 year, or for FY 2023 budget to the FY 2024 budget. The overtime, obviously, I had a small note on that. That is likely to increase, but right now it's currently listed as flat. And I think from what Chief just mentioned earlier is, like, because we are down 2 dispatchers and a supervisor, the overtime for the existing dispatchers it's almost built in there, and it's continuing to rise.
So both of these numbers on our sheet are flat?
Flat, yes.
Correct. I actually spoke with Evan this morning, and he's going to have to make a change on that because I had questioned that because I had actually submitted that it would be higher, and it
Okay, so
didn't
these
get
two
changed.
numbers are not correct, and it'll come back before us?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Is there a specific question, though, on the salaries or the
No,
overtime?
I'm
I
just
can-
curious why there's no increase
Okay, yeah.
Well, currently there are 3 positions unfilled.
unfilled.
Yeah,
So
so
it may-
we're actively trying to recruit for those positions. So we're trying to get those individuals on staff. So, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, if I'm going to misspeak at any point in time, please jump in there. Once we kind of get those all positions filled, overtime then becomes a little more manageable, but it is a built-in overtime system because of the 12-hour shifts. So,
Yeah, understood. But whether the position is filled or not, we're still budgeting as if it was completely filled.
yes.
So we're
I
not
would
seeing
estimate
any
it.
increase.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I'm sorry.
So I'm questioning why we're not seeing an increase.
Again, and Evans had to step up away, but this morning I spoke with him about that ad, and he did catch it himself, and he said he would clarify that at the next budget meeting.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't answer that one properly.
Yeah, no, I understood. Thanks.
Any further offerings by you, Chief, or the commissioners? Any questions? On the on dispatch? If not, we'll move, and now we want to go to Beach Patrol, I think, Chief?
Yes, sir.
All righty. Lawrence?
Okay, Beach Patrol, page 25
Let
on
me
your
get-
attachment.
Let me find that.
37, Stan.
Page 37, in the support document, the Beach Patrol.
Okay, some highlights here if we're looking down. That is going to be, it's not lining up there. Housing expense or housing allowance, obviously that's 504,950. Addition of housing allowance, which is new this year, obviously. We anticipate as many as 50 may take advantage of this expense or this opportunity, this benefit. As you can see, uniforms part-time, addition of the uniforms for the junior lifeguard program. And that is line 504100, uniforms part-time. Another note, obviously, that is going to be down in capital outlays, line number 990000. That is that jet ski with a rescue sled slated for this coming fiscal year purchase or requested.
Well, I'm sorry, what line is that?
That is 990000, capital outlays.
Oh, down at the bottom, okay.
Yes.
Jet ski, so that's.
Jet ski with a rescue
new
sled.
thing. Have we ever had a jet ski before?
No, we haven't, Mayor. We've had to utilize the fire departments several times this year, and we're prepared to discuss it today or when you get to capitals.
When we get to
the
the
next
CIP,
budget.
maybe we can
But they were not, we could not use it, and they were needed. We have the Olympics for the lifeguards downtown, and they're requesting that we keep one by there for in case anything happens. So we got a training outline set up and maintenance, all that for you for discussion topics as when we
so
get to
maybe
that.
during the CIP, we can delve a little deeper into it,
Yes.
just since it's a brand-new thing. and
Absolutely.
everything. Anything else?
If I could, the one thing I would sit there and say, if you look at the overtime line item for $60,000, that where we get that big why for lifeguards that happens, I just want to make sure we point out that the biggest part is the junior lifeguard program is so successful that we have kids come in, so we have to have enough employees come in an hour early 3 times a week to sit there and help do that. And I definitely encourage we keep funding for that because it's definitely good. And a lot of them, and that's just a lot of the senior ones helping out. A lot of the junior first, second year lifeguards volunteer their time and come in too. So it takes a big team, a big effort, and the extra hours to make that happen, but it's worthwhile. And then it just goes on to holiday pay and EMR training. And I have Captain Giles with us today if you need to know what the EMR training is, but it's just another 40-hour course that we're getting our lifeguards, some of the top tier ones, additional medical training, and that's bringing us up and known nationally for what we're creating down here just over the last few years. And also, we're really excited about that. So that's the little bit of an increase because we were over in that line item last year. A lot of questions Commissioner Bennett brought up under the police in reference to salaries, where we're doing. In 2022, our lifeguards, we start at $16 an hour. We did increase that to $16.50, but we've had such a great ones coming back for first, second, third years or whatever. So we're looking at out of 75 employees that we bring on, at least 20 would be third year, so they're around $17. So again, we're very competitive to other beach towns.
Chief, but there is a $100,000 increase in salaries. Is that more people?
No more people. Again, it's just because we're so successful now with the retention, we're getting the third-year employees coming back. That's why it's more money. So we can't anticipate it's just $16.50. If we have 20 coming back at $17 an hour, and if we're getting others coming back at $17.50 an hour, and again, working 80 hours a week.
We did move up. Remember, we allocated before for 65 lifeguards up to 75, and we would hire 10 lifeguards after Labor Day weekend to fill in for those 3 weeks. So what we're finding is we really don't need to hire any of those relief lifeguards because we have enough lifeguards to cover basically Hickman to Henlopen at that time of the year. And the rest of the beach, we have swim at your own risk. So we decided to just make it 70 instead of 75. But we're hiring them up front, so we get them from the beginning. Because most of the time that we need them, you recognize it's from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Once we get to Labor Day, the week after Labor Day, it really dies down. So we don't need those extra 10 lifeguards. So we're going to add 5 up front. So
Okay. So last year we were at 65 and we're going to 70?
we're going to 70, but we're not hiring 10 relief guards in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, or distinction, we're not increasing the numbers per se. It's because on the back end, we had fall patrol was the numbers. So really, if you look at it, it's 5 less, but I averaged it out the same because we're bringing them on a little bit earlier.
Yeah, for the whole season.
Any other commissioners? Go ahead,
Sure,
Commissioner.
a couple things. I don't know if it falls into this place, but Moby mats, are we adding any Moby mats, or are all dune crossings covered with Moby mats now?
I can't answer that one. I do know that that will be in the capital project, if I'm not mistaken, the capital improvements projects.
I think that's Mike Peterman's department. Yeah.
That's Public Works.
Yeah, Public
And
Works.
back in July of 2022, we talked about the status of the fiduciary funds for the scholarship programs, Beach Patrol. Has that issue been resolved?
We're still working with me and Bert, or Bert's working on it also with Mrs. Stein.
Okay.
Working on that.
Is that line number 510120, beach patrol donation expense went from 20 to 6,000. Is that reflective of any of this, or is that completely separate?
It's completely separate. The lifeguard scholarship fund is going to be a 501c3. Has going to have no connection to the city. And we're just waiting on Mrs. Stein to move us forward. And
So essentially, after it was presented to the commissioners, there didn't seem to be much interest up here, perhaps, but you went back and reevaluated and took the city out of the equation, basically.
that's right. I think, as I recall, some of you were concerned about liability. And so we just sort of took it off the table. We had discussions with Mrs. Stein, and we said, well, let's not put the city in a position that they may not want to be in. So we'll just form a separate 501c3 and move forward.
So could you explain what that, to Commissioner Gossett's point, what is Beach Patrol donations expense? Doesn't look like you had any this past year.
I think the one thing that we do have is when we do the lifeguard program, the junior lifeguard program, we charge, for each individual to come into the lifeguard program. We purchase shorts, shirts, and it accounts to the overtime. But we do have an excess of money, and then that's given into that lifeguard fund.
Well, I think I can answer this question. Is 2 years ago when I took over the lifeguards, there were some things when I was looking over the budget, I did not like calling things donations when they weren't truly donations. In other words, we were collecting money for fees for the junior lifeguard, and saying that's a donation. Well, now it needs to go back in general fund and be how it's allocated, so in my opinion. So I sat down with the finance director and the city manager about changing some of the line items back. So now donations is what we anticipate actually people contributing, like maybe from the junior lifeguard program. Some parents say, this was wonderful. I want to write a check for $500. I want to, to go towards it next year. So that line item now is reflect what we think we're going to bring in as far as donations each year and all. So now we actually don't fall under donations. I actually increased 2 years ago, if you had looked, saw is in uniforms and all for the junior lifeguards and on the T-shirts and the shorts. I increased those line items. So it's a true reflection of what it's costing us to run these programs versus just calling it donations. So I think that's where you're starting to see a change. And as strictly as when I came in 2 years ago, I was trying to run it more how I saw how we did it for the dispatch center, for the police department. So we all kept in the same line what we were calling different items.
Right.
I don't know if that helps or not.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but so there is a line item somewhere in income that offsets this expense.
Correct. Yes.
Correct. Yes. So then my question is, Bert, on this line item for FY23, we budgeted $20,000, but the actual amount is blank. So it appears as though we didn't actually have any expenses for that. So that could just be an error that needs to be corrected on the report.
Well, we had some changes, as the chief described, and
So the actual for FY23, that might be, those expenses might be captured someplace else?
yes.
Okay. And I just have one last question, and it's Chief, you can probably best answer it. We're now starting to spend some serious amount of money on housing allowances. How will that program work? Are we paying money up front? Is there an agreement that they have to stay to a certain date? If they just up and leave, do they already have the housing allowance?
Right. What happens is it's the ones that are renting property is how we've kind of been working this, and so we actually pay the $1,000 stipend to the realtor itself. So in their name. So we're not giving the employee any money. It goes straight to when we see their contract, we reach out to if it's Caldwell Banker, if it's Lingo's, whomever, and we pay them direct for that. We do sit there and tell them that for them to sign, they have to stay by a certain date.
Okay.
And but for my police officers and all, we have them sign something anyway if we have to buy for their psychologicals and things like that to reimburse us if they don't stay the entire time. Now, that varies, unfortunately, almost individually, because if somebody can show you that their college begins on a certain day, obviously they have to leave a couple days before that. So that varies individually, but they're trying to do their best and commit for the summer as long as possible. We do that with the lifeguards too. Well, I take it back. We're going to. This is the first year we would be doing this for the lifeguards. That wasn't something we did last year. And I thought it was important to listen to the mayor and commissioners, this body, for the police department. Well, if you're incentive, everybody's got the same issues trying to find housing and payment. So I thought it was worth putting in the budget for the discussion.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I'm supportive of it. I just want us to have an understanding on how it works and what if someone leaves midsummer,
And
et
that's
cetera.
why some of them didn't take us up on it last year because they were scared about the commitment, if they could sit there and stay at the time they needed to because of school, or some of them are in military and things like that.
Generally, for your seasonal lifeguards and cadets, are they paying up front for 3 months, or do they still do it month by month?
Most of them are up front.
Up front, okay.
Yeah, and some of the lifeguards that I have relatives, friends that live down here and they stay there. So we won't apply that toward, if you have a relative that lives in Rehoboth Beach, you obviously have a place to stay. So we're applying it toward the ones that live outside the radius and don't have anybody here. So we sort of have to make those.
Exactly. So that, this year, but as you said, the discussion's going to continue because it may get to a point. Is it a housing thing, or is it a incentive to come sign with us for the summer season, and give it to everyone versus the ones that have the distance to come to? Because, again, if you live in Dover, has still a hike each day, gas money back and forth, and beach traffic. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Any, Commissioner Legree?
As everybody remembers, I was the guy that opposed this move when we took the beach patrol away from the direct reporting to the city manager and placed them with chief. Obviously, I was wrong, and it's really worked well. I live on the ocean block, as everybody knows, and so I spend a lot of time. Those kids their morale's high. The junior lifeguard program, I go down there and take pictures. They go wild, and kids keep coming back, and the whole thing just chimes together. And the beach patrol is one of the most visible and important parts of our brand of the city. I don't care if you double their housing allowance, whatever you're doing is good. Just keep doing it.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Commissioner.
Thanks, Mayor.
I would love to take credit for that, but it's bringing on Captain Giles.
Yes,
and
I realize
the
that.
morale,
It's the kids.
so
It's
it's
the
the
kids.
total team effort. It's all him.
That's correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody?
Can I add also?
Yes.
Commissioners, I want to open up the invitation every weekend. We do a ring the bell ceremony. So we have someone special. Doesn't have to be an alumni. We start our season every time with the mayor ringing the bell. I'd love for our commissioners to come up, ring the bell, give them 2 minutes and 3 minutes, a little talk about what they're doing and how important it is. So I'm going to open it up to you. So I want you to come and ring the bell. So
Thank you.
you got it.
You're doing a good job. Anybody else up here? If not, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item of business, which is, if that's all right with you, we'll go to the bandstand. I think Corey's been waiting patiently.
Bandstand is on page number 27.
He's brought us a surprise in a box there.
Thank you.
25, 26, 27 at the 27, which is page 39 of the support documents.
Good morning.
Corey.
Good morning.
Good morning,
And,
Corey.
So what I'm going to be giving you guys is a brief overview of the budget that I have. I only have a few lines to go over specifically, but we do have some big changes we like to really make. What we're coming up on is two big timeframes. Number one, we're approaching almost 20 years of the structure of the bandstand being a building. So we're facing a couple things that any structure would have after 20 years. So we need to budget for that, and I'm going to talk through a few of those things. But in addition, if you notice by the dates on these screens, we have just finished our 60th season. And for us not to recognize that is a gross misservice of what we're doing here. If you look at any of the new logos that certain businesses are putting up, if you look at any of the pictures and the postcards and the things that we're not even manufacturing, the Bandstand is that center focal point of the avenue and of what brings everybody here. And our job at the Bandstand is to provide, as a city, something free to the public, give them something to do so that when they come in and they want something with their family to be able to do something, some kind of memories to remember. That is our purpose for both the businesses for the public to serve, as well as those visitors to come back and write about and our social media and keep everything afloat. So I did want to go over a couple things specifically to what we're doing. So we do have 60 years of entertainment. By our count, this is over 3,000 performances, events, concerts, and all of this has been free to the public, and we've done a fantastic job of moving this up and up and up. Years ago, what we had were concert bands and big bands and military groups, and we got a great draw to some of these. But what we've expanded to is not only those groups, and which we specifically focus on military groups, and we're very lucky to have even new ones coming through. The United States Navy, who will perform for the president one day before coming to us, has been giving us a July 4th performance or something relative around there every year for probably the last 7 or 8 years. They're happy to come and do that for us, and it's a big honor, and we need to recognize what kind of structure we have and what kind of benefits the city of Rehoboth has. But as you can see, we've moved on to tribute acts and classic rock and oldies and we've really turned ourselves into something worth coming to. Vacationers message me all the time that they want to know what the schedule is because they want to schedule their vacation dependent on what acts we have that weekend. And that's a really good thing, and it's something that we should recognize as far as what we're able to do. But, of course, just like everything else, and as I'm listening to all these budgets go through, values go up. It's very important that if we continually ask for the same groups to come back and that we're bringing in these big draws, it's not appropriate for us to offer them the same price that we did 3-4 years ago. It's just not appropriate. We don't offer what's called hospitality in the business, which means food, catering, hotels. We want them to experience the city on their own. We don't want to be responsible for that. We don't want to favor one hotel, one lodging area, one business to provide the food in the hotel. So in theory, what we have is what's called a buyout. And what that means is we're going to pay a little bit more, a premium, to have them come in, and they're going to find locations on their own. Sometimes it's in town. Sometimes the town has a 2-night minimum stay, and they're unable to do that, and they may have to go outside that area, and that presents a problem for us, which is another reason why hotels don't always work for us. But in order for us to continue the path that we're leading, we're going to need to increase what we're looking to spend per summer. I'm looking for an increase of $25,000, which would raise our budget to $125,000. I think that's a very apropos option here. Last year was the first year that we ever had to go over our budget. We've never done that in as long as I've been a part of the Bandstand. And it was because, unfortunately, we had some COVID issues and we had certain groups drop out at the last minute. And in doing so, in order to maintain that facility, we didn't want to bring in just a group that didn't have a price tag that we could bring any group, let's put it that way. But there's a cost to an event that doesn't cost us much. And we want to bring in that quality entertainment, and we need to make sure we have a buffer for that. But in addition, the additional money goes towards the next summer. So when we have deposits and groups that we book early, because since the budget is April to April, I need to release my schedule pretty much in April. So I need to have additional monies available. If they require a deposit, we can use last year's budget to deposit towards the following season's reservation. So one of the things that we really want to make sure that we do, and this might be something for the CIP we can discuss later, I'm going to touch on it just real quick here. We are in a very big need. It is imperative that we upgrade our sound system. We have far exceeded the lifespan of what we have done so far. Our speakers are 7, 8 years old. Our soundboard has been hanging on by a thread for the last 2 years. We've had freezes of the software in the middle of the shows. I believe the public, hopefully, has not felt the impact, but it's been incredibly frustrating for us to work with the equipment that we have. There are some evenings that I would go down there questioning whether or not we're going to be able to have the show because things weren't working properly, and that's a very dangerous position to be in. We work in the weekends, in the evenings. There is nobody on call that we can make a phone call to that can come out on Saturday night at 8 o'clock. They're just not going to do that. We need to have consistency and the quality that we need. We currently have some bids out, and we're working with 3 different companies to get bids to replace these things. New speakers, new soundboard, amps, and what we're looking for, and our estimated cost for this is going to be around $45,000. That will serve us for the next at least 5 to 7 years, and we're hoping that we can start incorporating this into the CIP as we go on. We're realizing that this is something that needs a constant maintenance and upgrade. And keep in mind, these speakers sit outside no matter the weather, 365 days a year. We may need to start experimenting again with bringing them down in the wintertime. We stopped doing that because it actually wasn't really cost effective. By the time we paid for them, you can't just, it's not like at home where you just plug in a speaker and you're good. You have to angle them correctly, you have to measure it with the white noise, and you have to make sure that you get the proper readings from those speakers. Otherwise, you can't do it later on. There's just too much entailed. And by the time you paid for that enough times, with a cheaper version of a speaker, you've paid for a new speaker, so you might as well just replace them anyway. So we just kind of left them up. The speakers we're looking at now are much better quality, and we may need to look into some kind of removal. But as we've talked about with these special events, we go all the way until the Christmas tree lighting, and events start back up in February, March. It's not a whole lot of time, but at least during those winter months, we can eliminate 1 or 2, hopefully 3 or 4 if we can plan it right, that speakers would be unavailable at the bandstand for special events or other things. So that's one of the things that we could always talk about now or talk about later. I'm not sure if I'll be included in that meetings, but that's what it is. Talking about the 20 years, we're starting to see regular structural damage occur, and I would expect no other. On the top left picture, you see the painting. That is a metal structure, and every year we're getting additional rust to bleed through. We do have a company that works pretty well, and they'll come through and they'll grind it down. It does take a week to a week and a half or so to get it done. We already have them scheduled for this year coming up. This is the face of the city. We have to get this painted every year. There's really no way around it. This was actually taken a couple months ago, so it's gotten slightly worse, but that is the front-facing corner of the bandstand. So it will rust through, and we need to maintain that as best we can. As you can see the picture to the right, that is a light that needs to be replaced. All of those lights that are up there, those structures have been there for 20 years. They've served us very well, but they're hanging on by a thread, and they're looking to fall off, and they are old halogen bulbs, and we need to start moving towards some LEDs, something a little more efficient. There are a number of those. Those are the lights that light up the entire stage for the shows. They're the white lights that come up, just like on lights, just like these overhead. So they need to be replaced as well. The cracks in the concrete are also something that it's starting to appear. As skateboarders and other public walks up and down those steps, they're starting to break apart at the curves, at the edges, and you can visibly see those. It's not so much of a dangerous thing yet, but as you can see by the cracks in that bottom left picture, if that bottom corner does fall off, we've got sharp edges and we've got some issues that we need to work with. So we need to possibly, I don't want to relay all the concrete, but at least do some patching until we can figure out what we need to do. And then we may need to repaint or repave a thin layer on top just to redo the bandstand. I don't believe that's something we have to do this year, but it's something we're going to have to start to work towards as we move to additional years. So you may see that in the CIP coming up. GFIs on stage, or GFIs are just like the ones in your bathrooms at home. So we have to run full sound systems off GFIs. That's just by code. So these things go out very often, and fuses pop, hit the reset button, run back on stage. That's kind of how it works. We have nothing else that we can do besides that because that is by code. So these things have to get repaired frequently. And during the daytime, when we are not actively giving a show, people are charging their phones and doing whatever else that they want to these sockets. And if we have the power turned off for them, they get very upset and they end up worse. So We also have to do some ADA railing installations, if you look in that center picture on the bottom, just in case. We do have an open railing there. What used to have a handicap lift that we do not need anymore because of ADA requirements for the elevator that is currently on the stage, but that did not have a railing there because there was a handicap lift there, as you can see by those strips on the wall. Those are actually what needs to be patched and repainted. So the fence going down there needs to be repaired as well. So one thing we really want to be aware of is that the Bandstand is an entity by itself. It is a fully 100% branded object. So we have our own logos, we have our own website, we have our own social media. We have everything that would be maintained in a business except for merchandise. So that's one of the things I really wanted to talk to you. We have this many, we have so many followers on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. We've got thousands upon thousands, and we continue to build those as we go out. And one of the constant things that I get asked is as I wear some of the merchandise that me and my staff of one or two ever has is a couple shirts or hats or whatever else we have for us to use for the year. Other people want to have that. And I think we need to capitalize on the 60 years of doing this, that there's an opportunity there. And what we have found is actually a win-win opportunity that is almost at zero risk and zero issue for the city at all. So there's a local vendor here. If you've ever been familiar with any of your children or your friends have ordered T-shirts from these fundraisers, they wait for a batch order to go through and they'll screen print 50 to 100 at a time. That's great, but if somebody wants to go and place an order for one T-shirt and one hat, you have to wait until they get 50 of them before that's going to happen. We have a local vendor here that works for companies like BB Medical Center, Cape and Lopin School District. They have got a number of these, and they have perfected the way to do a one-off and host the online store as well. So basically what this would do is give them permission that if they get an order, they can single print an item for us, ship it, and mail it off. The benefit to us is that there's zero overhead. If nobody buys a shirt, nobody loses money. We have not invested in the product at all. They may keep an inventory of a few shirts for multiple businesses, but it's not necessarily for us. If somebody does buy a shirt, they of course would get a profit for printing and shipping and doing whatever they needed to do. We would get a quarterly statement for 15% of whatever that profit is. We don't have to do a thing. It's all managed by them. And what we've done, we've also talked with Glenn, and he's come up with a contract. We already have that drafted and tentatively approved by Evan when he was acting as city manager, so that we can have something that would be willing to go. And this would, what I did bring are some samples of some of the shirts that the company would be able to make. We might change the logos in some way to constitute the 60 years, but T-shirts, hoodies. We also have embroidered hats, which I'd love to you guys can see the quality of it, just to see what it is. Sweatshirts, crew necks, these are all things that the public has been asking for us to do. Visors as well, depending on what can fit on them. And then, of course, what I think most people are going to want, as beautiful as our white benches are, they are probably the most uncomfortable benches we have, but they look great. So I think some kind of seat cushions or something like that is something we've been asked to do if we provide any, because everyone is bringing their own. Now, they can always bring their own, or wouldn't it be nice to have something that has our brand on it, something that would showcase us, something they can take home. We do have, and I just want to pass this box down, we have temporary things. This is stuff that we also give out to bands. If you notice any bands that come around, they have stickers on their amps or their stage boxes or the things they bring around to them. So there's a bunch of stickers in here that have been custom made specifically for us. There are some magnets. There are some keychains, and we have some other things. So if you would like some, go ahead and collect them as you go through. You're welcome to take as many as you want. And this is kind of the social media pushes that we'd like to do, so that we have an option to give people, come on out, welcome our 60th year. We have some freebies. We could do online contests. We could give them a little package of items. I think that would be a great option. Oh, last one was bags. Everybody likes the bags for the shopping and all those kind of things. So that was something that the manufacturer thought we might enjoy. So these are things that were graciously printed and offered as options. So you're welcome to see the quality of them and see if it's something that would work. But again, this would be something that would be a win-win for everybody because there's not really an investment. It would be a very minor investment for the screen printing to begin with as far as the product that they need to do the screen print. But after that, it's really just letting it go as it is. If nobody bought, nobody lost. Because what we've kind of figured out is if we're not really going to do this for them, we have found that the public is going to do it themselves.
Oh, no.
So we'd like to give them something a little different.
Are you going to offer tattoos?
No, I'm not, and it's not me, and I have no idea who that is, but I'm sure at some point we're going to find out who that is. Hopefully, whoever it is, and if they're in the public right now, I would love to know. But we did get that sent to us.
Corey, could you just clarify, did you say that the vendor cut with the city, our cut was 15?
Yes. Yes,
15.
15, yep.
Okay.
15% of the profit.
Yes, thank you.
But we keep the copyright of.
Oh, absolutely, and that is in the contract, absolutely. The logos that we have, these are specifically our logos. So these are copywritten to us.
Corey, if you have support of the city manager, I would also likewise support it, especially when I hear zero risk, zero input. That sounds pretty appetizing to me. I like that this program that you've got the control of it, and I think that's fine. To go back to your budget, I don't see anything out of order on there other than when we talk about the capital budget. It's got 45,000 in there. It says deferrable, but I would tend to want to do something sooner than later. But I do notice in the capital improvement program, it does not appear to have any structural repairs in there. And just based on those pictures, I know that I would want to maybe accelerate the structural repairs, whatever we need for this summer. I have been underneath, and was it you that gave me the tour? That I was concerned about leakage, the underground meeting rooms and everything. And I was very, very pleased to see that there was no leakage, no rust penetrating the meeting rooms down below. So that's good, but it looks like the outside's suffering quite a bit.
It is.
Yeah.
Our first priority, in my eyes, is just to get that sound system running, get it back to where it needs to be. We've included the structural changes in the main budget, and we've asked for 75,000 instead of the usual 50,000 to hopefully include some of that. And then we'll see as we go. We're shifting the way that the bandstand's operations occur. We've usually left different aspects of the bandstand to different departments, building and grounds, facilities, maintenance. It's kind of all been, anybody that needs to do something kind of does something. And what's happened is it's kind of gotten away to anybody that knows what's going on. You're hiring different people to accomplish the same jobs. And then if you get one electrician to come in, they've got to figure out what the other electrician did, and we're paying them for that. That's just one example. So it creates more of an issue. So what we're trying to do now is to bring everything together. So this is also going to be a learning year, and I briefed Lawrence about this too, that we're kind of figuring out what we're going to take to keep this structure going under one budget. This may work for this year, and it may not, and we may know after this year, hey, next time we're going to have to include options for this. Yearly painting is clearly going to be a thing. Yearly electrical maintenance is going to be an annual thing. There's nothing else we can do about that. So certain things like this are going to have to be repeat offenders for us, and we have to be aware.
So for the sound system, it sounds like that's an urgent.
It absolutely is.
So is the intention it's replaced for this season coming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I have active bids, and I've been working on that since November. Supply chains are always going to be a problem, so I need to start moving on this fairly soon. The vendors that I have talked to understand who we are. They know that we're not going anywhere, and we've used them in the past. So they are willing to wait for the budget for their monies while possibly getting tentative approval to order the materials so that we can get these in time. Because if we start April 1st, speakers usually take anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks. Sometimes they are custom made. Marine grade is what we need. They don't just have these in a warehouse shelf. So it will take some time, and we have to have something ready and willing. We've got proms that are happening in May. We've got Memorial Day celebrations in the end of May. We've got to start moving for our season, and the less opportunity we have to get in here and get things completed, the worse it's going to be because traffic, parking, and everything else.
So what's the barrier to starting the order now? Is there one?
We don't have an approved budget.
Approval of the budget.
We spoke about this last night to Corey, Bert, and Evan and I, and getting a preliminary purchase order under this fiscal year's authorization wouldn't be out of the ordinary because you can get it moving, get the purchase order. Once the commissioners and the mayor approve the budget, we can then go swap that with an approved FY24 purchase order. Right now, it would just be looking with the vendors and Corey to make sure that, yes, we are committed to the maintenance and capital outlays for the bandstand.
Well, Corey, I want to thank you very much for your entrepreneurial, spirited innovativeness, because that makes me much more comfortable in investing more for the bandstand, knowing that there could potentially be some income. And I think you do a great job, so thank you. And you, if you're looking for a consensus, I certainly support everything you're asking for in the budget.
I do too, and that's why I was curious if this can be done up here today so things can move on instead of waiting for whatever, ceremonial.
If we could get a consensus, that would allow us to kind of move forward in that process and get the obligations for this, for what he needs to move forward. Corey, he's right. He's working now directly with our facilities manager, Luke. When Corey and I walked around the bandstand, we were kind of looking at some things. I don't believe it needs a full replacement this year. I think a skim coating on some of those concrete areas. But you're going to see major capital improvements for that bandstand coming into the out years for the capital. It has to. I mean, I don't think we're at that stage where we can put a Band-Aid anymore, but we can get it up to what we need. We can get it up to the level and stature of Rehoboth Beach for this year, and then we're going to go ahead and start looking at the 25, 26, 27 capital years for those specific improvements. And Corey's done a great job. He and Luke are working, high-fiving down the hallway, handling some of the nice projects where he needs to keep it up to the level it needs to be maintained. So,
yeah, and thank you. And what we're doing is we're learning about the CIP, like I am specifically, because I've never really had to do this with a 20-year, run of the bandstand. This building it was brand new, so we've been doing pretty well with it. So we're learning what we need to include. So as we're here for additional years, we're going to have more things to discuss, and I'm just kind of getting my feet wet and trying to figure out how to do this myself as well. Yes.
I have 3 questions. The first one I should know, but I don't. Organizationally, where do you guys report through to?
Straight to the city manager.
Straight to the, okay. And then your social media numbers are quite good. I was unaware you had your own website, but the numbers are quite good. Are you working with our communications group, or is this just solely?
Lynn and I work in conjunction. She handles the press releases for me. I'll send them to her, and we'll kind of cultivate them, and she does send them out. Yes. Lynn doesn't work on the weekends when I work, so we've kind of kept it kind of separate. But if I need help with that kind of thing, Lynn's always been there, yes.
And I should know this, and I'll ask our communications, but are they both linked together? Are you linked with the city sites?
Oh, yeah. On the very bottom, the city logo, it looks a little lighter blue. That will click through, and it does mention specifically in many locations that we are with the city.
And then the last thing, and I don't know if this is something I was surprised to hear you said people are plugging in their phones to charge them. Is that kind of nonstop all day sort of
Yes.
thing? Have we looked into maybe doing charging stations or something along the boardwalk, or is that not? I don't know if that's something we might want to consider I don't know if that's a budget item for something else, or I don't think we want people climbing all over that, plugging their phones in, do we?
Well, no matter what you do, they're going to be eating their pizza and ice cream in the shade at the bandstand. So you can add charging stations. That's a great idea. but what they're looking for is that shade. So especially on a hot day, they're not going to sit on the white benches that are kind of screaming hot at that point. They're going to come up there, and we've kind of come to terms with what it is. The floor is always going to be sticky. There's always going to be little stains. We have a power washing that we've got a quote going out right now to get it power washed every other week just to kind of clean off what there is. It's a constant battle, but it's a welcomed battle because it is the alternative is shutting the bandstand down during the day as far as what it, and it's a public park in most references as to what the structure would really be defined as, and it would be hard for us to do. But I agree, it would be fantastic to have some alternate route for them to charge besides looking, oh, there's an electric plug running up there in the shade and doing it. We may be opening ourselves up to a responsibility that people aren't going to use unless they're not going to sit there without shade. That's the benefit we have.
No, I too am supportive. It's an iconic structure for us, and we need to make sure it looks its best. So I'm supportive of it too. Thanks for your presentation.
Yep.
Thanks.
So, go
I
ahead,
had a
Malky.
couple questions. The musical acts that you usually employ, is it normal for them to sell merch, or do you allow that? Or
Yes, we allow them to sell their own merchandise. We don't take a cut of that.
right, but it's something that they handle completely, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm just wondering, with the merchandise aspect, which I think is an absolute no-brainer. Would that be something that we would do in conjunction with them, or do you have the staff to be able to handle merch? 'Cause I've done this before, and man, it can be a real pain. Especially if you got like sizes and all and different items and all
And
that kind of stuff. It's
returns
really
and that kind of
difficult
thing.
to do.
Yeah, so we've kind of briefly talked through this. What they would require for us to do that is basically have a manpower there during specific hours, which, depending on the timing, just doesn't always work out. Inventory, we would have locations we need to store these materials. So by eliminating it and saying things are only available online, we might be able to do that. The original thought was to have a few items that would be there to do it. That would require us to have some kind of payment system. I don't want cash. I don't want the responsibility of cash. I don't want the responsibility of inventory. That's not something that I'm interested in doing, and I don't think it's a smart idea for us to do, because then we have to deal with receipts and tax money and everything else that goes on with that. So, however, there is a way we could do it with credit cards, with one of those swipers and a cell phone, the way they do it now with Square and PayPal and all the other things. Not as interested in doing that, but I think it's something to consider. I agree, think it would be a great option to say, oh, let me go get you one. Here you go, pay for it, you're great. I brought it up to Max before. It's a scary thing. It is, and I'm on his side too. It's such a big undertaking because there's so many things that go into it.
Right.
And if we don't do it right, it would fall apart quickly. I think having this started, especially to celebrate the 60th year, to have it as somebody else would take over and manage it. And if by July we realize, hey, this is a great opportunity, everybody is liking this, it's something we could continue, we could expand it in additional years. But I think we're looking at an opportunity to just say, let's see how this goes. And maybe we can order them in bulk in the beginning if we have enough profit to do it, and just say, let's spend an extra $5,000 and just order a bunch of T-shirts and sweatshirts, have them on hand. And some would be giveaways, some would be promotional, and anything else, so that we have that available as an opportunity. But I'd like to see how it goes first as well.
Right. I can just vouch. I used to work for the Baltimore Office of Promotion of the Arts, and we ran this thing called Artscape, which was a weekend event on the hottest weekend of July every year. And I will say that it's something that the public wants, but managing T-shirts, just T-shirts, is you can really go south in a hurry on that. And I sort of echo his comments. If we're going to do it, I mean, you'd really need to kind of plan for it. It would be great to have a like the commemorative 20th anniversary shirt or whatever it is, or something, or showing the rundown of all the acts that you're going to have during the year and everything. But man, you really got to plan for that. So I kind of applaud your thoughts, if you were going to get into this, to sort of wade in. I like the fact that the designs that you have are kind of simple, one color, but yet they're graphically interesting, and I think they'd be appealing to people and so forth and so on. The other comment I had about it, I again applaud this is such a brand for us, as you mentioned, and I think it's so pivotal with the summer experience that people have here and so forth. So, I don't want to mess with that. That's a golden egg that we have, for the city. And improving the sound, I think, obviously is imperative to enhance that experience or just maintain that experience or whatever. So I would also offer that. And I assume you're talking to Mid-South. Okay.
That's one of the. That's
Yeah,
one of
I
the
mean, there
bids.
is I would just mention there is a major sound company headquartered in Milton that just arrived here in the last couple of years, and that's a tremendous resource for this area and so forth. So, okay.
Thank you.
So is there any objection to directing the city manager to recognize that likely there's a consensus here to move forward with this, and when we adopt the budget, and to work with Corey in realizing the funds sooner than later?
No objection.
All right.
I think that would be, just the comment, Corey, thank you for the presentation. Sure. And I know it's 60 years, and you've been affiliated with the Bandstand more than half of those years?
Yeah, I'm at 33, I believe, 33, 34, something like that.
And we certainly appreciate it and what you've done. But looking at that and trying to plan ahead for future years, if you could, for the next budget cycle, think about staffing. I know you're full-time, part-time, full-time. You have one assistant and some volunteers and what have you, just that, just kind of think about moving it forward in that regard. I know Mrs. Hayes stopped because she died, and I don't want to see that happen to you, certainly. But just looking at how we can maintain this wonderful asset to the community and moving it forward in future years.
Yeah,
absolutely. If you could give it some thought in the downtime, if there is any.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's nothing else by the commissioners, there's no public here. Corey, we thank you very much, and obviously we want you to work with the city manager on realizing your budget sooner than later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Pick up the little box on the hat.
What little number you have on there? How much is that?
This? It's actually discontinued.
That's nice.
Thank you very much. With that, we're going to move from Bandstand to communications. Which is...
Communications is on page 13.
Excuse me. Communications on page 13. It's page 25 of 56 in your support documents. Whenever you're ready.
I'm on a different. Have no major opening comments.
42 pages. That's on 25.
The only thing I know Lynn will talk about this one in depth. What you see before you, I guess, on the major line, obviously, will be 515500 advertising. In addition to the normal advertising cost, we have been looking at including the deliberation of a website redesign, review, refresh, whatever the words we're looking at. We're still kind of working on that concept, and also a communication engagement, residential visitor, that type of engagement type software. So I know Lynn can talk about that one more in depth and what the ramifications or enabling that would provide us. So.
Great, thank you. Yeah. So. Again, the advertising line, since I don't have many lines in my budget, is where we put the budget for a website revamp and the possibility of a digital engagement tool. Obviously, we've heard commissioners talk a lot about their desire to engage more with community members, for the city to engage more. And one possibility is a digital engagement tool. And we did a demo recently with Granicus, which is a company that provides a lot of digital government services. And they have a tool they call Engagement HQ. It used to be called Bang the Table when it was created in Australia. I like that name. Anybody who can come up with a great catchy business name gets a point in my book. But the tool that they showed us has a complement of 8 different digital tools through which the city could share information about projects, for example, public works projects or its budget, where we are. You can kind of provide a timeline of where you are in the project, who is leading that project. You can also set up polls or surveys related to the project. You can do mapping, kind of ideation, storytelling. So tools like that are something that we are looking into, trying to be responsive to your desire to make engagement a higher priority for the city. We haven't yet come to a determination if that's the way we want to go.
If you recall in last week's communication with the commissioners and mayor, we did put just the overline. We went through, it was probably about 25 to 30-minute demonstration. Again, not sold on any of it. I think there's 2 things that we need to look at is what do we want our website, our brand, our face to look like? And I think that will drive where the website would go, whether that's a complete new website transition, or this would just be the planning and iteration for it, or maybe it's a refresh or just an update. All those things could remain on the table. And then the community engagement, how best do we communicate? And what different facets are we looking at? Are we looking at specific resident engagement criteria? Are we looking at specific visitor engagement criteria and how best to communicate that one? There's ways about this one we can go for days on this, but I think we have to come back and look at what do we want to use this for and how best can we achieve those goals. Like that, I always go back to the problem statement. What's the best problem statement? And we haven't derived that yet. And I think that once we kind of be able to look back and ask those questions and come up with that, and then share that, like how are we looking at this in the correct manner? And I think right now we wanted to be able to at least put this on the table to look at it and have that further discussion.
I think you're asking all the right questions. You know, I don't know that much about all these social media and stuff, but I guess how I approach it is it going to be usable? Will it be used? And then are the results usable? And I always think back to the Cape, one of the local newspapers that always puts these polls in there. And some of the questions they ask and the results they get are not usable to me. They're meaningless, especially if you can't categorize who is giving the response. Do I really care if somebody from Millsboro responds to the Cape newspaper and gives an answer? So, but anyhow, I applaud you. I think you're asking a lot of the right questions. Anybody else?
I do.
Commissioner Sharp?
I just think it's very smart to have the money in the budget so that we can have the formative conversations where we can decide what do we care about and then prioritize from there. But Lynn, help me with my memory from last year's budget discussion. I know it was virtual because I remember all this. I'm sure everybody remembers. Lawrence, you didn't have to be with us at that time. But did we have something last year called flash vote? And I was curious if we talked about that, was my memory correct? And did we ever execute anything? Because I think we put $5,000 in the budget last year.
We did, and your memory is excellent.
Well, that's wonderful.
So we did discuss flash vote.
Also takes really good notes.
Yes, she does.
Yes, Edward, I do.
Not put anything by her.
We discussed flash vote last year, which is a service that I had heard about at a conference that I went to. And what they promote is they say that they do truly scientific polls of communities and provide information on the questions that you want to ask so that they can kind of inform decision-making by the board. I did not receive feedback that there was interest in that service. So,
You inferred that from us?
yeah, yes, through the city manager at the time, you know, I would have conversations. And I may have misunderstood the information, but I got the impression that there was not interest.
Well, and I'm fine with the answer. We just did not move forward on that.
Right.
Because this, to me, sounds much more substantive. And I believe that until we get into something like this and have the goal conversations, what's our goal? Should we or should we not? At least if we have the funds in the budget, we'll be able to execute rather than waiting another year if we choose to do so.
Sure, absolutely.
So I didn't really want to get in the weeds today because that's for a different discussion, different day. But from a budget standpoint, I think this is a very smart move.
I agree.
Go ahead.
I agree with Commissioner Sharp. And I think what would be helpful for me when we do dive into how do we prioritize, I'd like to see some examples of some of the things you mentioned. I think would be very helpful in determining that. And one question well, I've got two questions. One, you've got everything lumped under advertising, which is fine. But do you have a breakout of what is website redesign versus this
I do.
engagement?
Yes. I estimated about 40,000 for a website redesign, about 20 to 25,000 for the engagement tool, which that may be high in further conversations. Some of them may be based on population, pricing based on population, in which case we would do better pricing perhaps. Contract services, design, mail prep, 10,000, and advertising itself, 7,000.
Do you know when the last time the website was sort of refreshed? Because I thought it was fairly recent.
I don't have that information.
I don't have that, but we'll see if we can find out.
I would say that the website is essentially reflective of its original design. From, nobody was on here, the communications committee with me, but that would have.
Wasn't that, the communications committee was.
You were.
Yes, hello.
And that would have been.
12 years ago.
12 to 15. Easy.
I've only been retired 12 years. so
12 years.
It was
right,
within that
12
span, and
years
then
ago.
I think the refresh
Right.
is how I think we referred to the website. I think that refresh was like 7 years ago.
Yeah. Well, that's,
It's-
maybe
and
that's
to-
the time the portal was added.
Yes, I think
and,
in
the document
today's,
center.
in today's world of how fast things change and how fast you need to react, it's been a long time for us.
So what I'm hearing from you, and I think I agree, is that it's time for a full redesign, not just a refresh.
I think, Mayor, it's past time.
Yeah.
And I agree. I mean, it's riddled with problems, and the mobile version of the website is terrible versus the web version, et cetera. Which brings me, so I want to make sure that whatever we do is more focused on, well, obviously we want the web version to be perfect, but we need to ensure that the web version is, which is how a lot of people nowadays access information, is perfect. And sort of technology leads me to my third question, which I understand printing in forms is going up a few $1,000s. And I guess my question is, and there's other things in the admin section that I want to revisit, but since this is here in communications, what are we doing to print less and use QR codes and digital stuff more? Because for me, that's where I want to see the future, is not printing all this paper, people using QR codes to, pull up information.
Commissioner, if I could just jump in here real quick. It's not that I'm anti-paper or I hate paper, but I'm anti-paper and I hate paper. plain and simple, I think we can do so much better with the digital technology. It's cheaper, it's more reflective of the growing society that we're going into. And exactly, QR codes, I had those laced throughout my last community. You want to know something, hit the QR code, you can find out in 10 seconds what's going on. So yes, that was my pervasiveness in my last community. I will continue to but it's not that I'm abandoning this, because you notice I have it on the desk here. I think there's a place for everything. You have all mediums. You have to use all mediums to the highest capacity possible. And we have different demographics that are on this right here, and they will continue to use this, and I will continue to use this as long as those demographics exist. But I think if we are moving forward and capitalizing on this, having that visualization on my last website, I could tell you how many users were on this one, how many were on this one, how many were on the tablet, and what the repetition was, what the refresh rate was. I'm hitting walls trying to get you that level of fidelity, but I think we need that one. How many people are residents? How can we look at that one? You can extrapolate those data points by having that level of fidelity on your website. Completely agree. But I'm sorry to cut you off. I didn't mean
No
to.
worries.
I just wanted you to express that one. I'm anti-paper, but not anti-paper, because I think we need to
I
use it.
understand. So I'd love to hear that it's one of the reasons why you're here, because you are focused and forward thinking, and I love that. I'm glad to hear you say that. But that brings me back to my question: why are we spending more money in FY24 on paper?
Well, and I do have an answer for that question. So I would say, in general, I don't think that we print very much. We print the parking guide each year. That's in the parking department's budget, not in this budget. What you're seeing reflected, simply printing costs are more expensive this year. They went up significantly following the pandemic. But this is printing for the calendar. And you've been doing a printed calendar since long before I came here. When I started my previous job, I was shocked that they had a printed calendar. And I started right about the time that the calendar was about a month from coming out, and it was running late, and my phone rang off the hook because that community didn't get its printed calendar. So maybe I'm assuming that there's an interest in printed calendars that there isn't, although I do feel that we've tried to make the calendar more interesting with photographs and providing some detailed information, but a fair question whether we want to continue to do that.
Does it pay for itself?
No.
We send out a calendar.
We do sell some. We do sell some, but
I don't.
Sell them for $5 a pop, don't
yes,
we?
we do.
In my last community, we had a quarterly magazine, and it was sent out to every resident. I had 14,390 single-family homes in that community, and they all received a list of the Chronicles. It was a wonderful application. Still doing it, but the printing costs went up exponentially during COVID. I had 3 printers in the greater lower Pittsburgh area. After COVID, I had 1. And all of the paper was shifting down to a lower quality, higher price. And it is just, by order of magnitude, increasing and strangling what organizations are forcing to deal with these days.
Well, I don't recall how the calendar ever came about, or if it was ever voted on by this body. But I question.
It was not.
It was not.
No.
And I question the need for it. I'm not saying that I'm advocating about taking it away right now, but if we have a public engagement program, I would like to know if anyone actually utilizes it, and let's get rid of it if not.
They're selling pretty well.
Let me go to Jay first and then Tony. Jay?
I utilize the calendar every day. I love the pictures, but you put the trash schedule on the back. That made it for me. Otherwise, the calendar would be in my trash. But I love the pictures.
Well, here's my question.
And that is,
Wait.
Okay, go ahead.
Tony's, I told Tony that she's next to that.
Okay. I really take a dim view of having a conversation on a calendar that costs, I would imagine, around 10 grand,
Yeah,
roughly.
maybe a little less.
And I won't compare it to some other things that we just jettison as if they are not important, but I can't tell you the number of phone calls I have gotten. There is a large segment of our population here. Look at the demographic of our population, and you can't just eliminate things that people really do have value in. And wait, I'm speaking. And the issue to me is less that and more Rehoboth Reflections, where all the folks take the photographs. The generosity that is transferred from this city, and Lynn, you can back me up or disagree with me on this, to the photographers who submit their work. How many did the city get last year?
At least 150, 180 somewhere.
Submissions for photographs to then be whittled down to go into the calendar. Doesn't mean that, that's the end all and be all. However, those photographers and the photography community finds it helpful to have their work featured. So there are some very other unknowns that I don't think people have an awareness of how that calendar, to me, it's another spoke in the wheel of how our brand is important to people. And that's all I wanted to offer on it.
Thank you.
And it's minimal cost, so.
Commissioner
My-
Marker, go ahead.
My comment is that the calendar is such a quantum leap from the newsletter we used to get, once a year, twice a year at the beginning of the season, which contained the schedule of the trash pickup and all this other kind of stuff. So the mere fact that we actually have a calendar that functions as a calendar, and in that calendar are things that you want to know about. Now, the only fault I have in this is I have to diligently go in there and put the trash schedule on the actual calendar blocks. I would like to have that incorporated ahead of time so I don't have to do it, But anyway, I don't see why we don't do it that way. It's great that we have the meeting schedule and the holidays and all that kind of stuff, but I think we should also have because I think that's an important detail. Because I can never figure it out. I know there's sort of a sequence to it, but when does it happen? When does it start? When does it stop? And all that kind of stuff. But anyway,
We did consider that. We felt it was too complicated design-wise.
I'll tell you what you do.
to do it.
Here's my suggestion. There's a red block that tells you that it's trash pickup. There's a green block, that's your lawn pickup. Whatever. But you just need a little code. That's all it needs. That's it. You don't have to
Everyone's different.
Huh?
Every area of town's different.
So what? In a different block. Then you can have
and there's a code for the holidays.
You could figure that out pretty easy.
Well, my only thought was that we at least evaluated if we are going to do public engagement. And yes, there's a lot of people that appreciate it, and I love that we do the photography contest, but there's also a lot of people just throw them out. I don't use a calendar. So, maybe we print half as much and people sign up to receive them. I'm just saying that we at least look at it and evaluate it.
I will tell you that I had great feedback. So we didn't used to mail them to people, and that is an additional cost. But I had great feedback that folks really appreciated receiving that from the city. And I want to get back to your original question. We do also print a recruiting piece for seasonal cadets. It does have a QR code on it for the websites. And another, I don't hate paper. I like printed pieces. I think they still have a function if used sparingly and appropriately. I think that last year, probably the most popular piece that we produced was the direct mail piece on the changes to the trash can requirements. And probably the bulk pickup, spring bulk pickup information that was included on it was also, got great feedback on that. It was a nightmare project to mail because there are no mailboxes in Rehoboth, but people seem to appreciate receiving that printed postcard.
The trash can project that's yet to be concluded.
Yes, that one.
Yeah, it is on our agenda, by the way. So.
Well, and just to wrap up for me, I'm sorry. is, I think Commissioner Chernowski hit the nail on the head as well, that if we have a public sentiment tool or an engagement tool, we can very much validate what we hear on the phone and what we hear in person. I'm sorry, Patrick.
No, I support the update on the website. I was just looking at my notes. It was February of 14, the last time comments were made to update the website. So two things on that. Do we have a policy, if you will, or anything of procedures with regards to whose ultimate responsibility is to maintain the quality, if you will, or the timeliness of the website?
So my understanding is that
I don't
that
like that
is my
phrase.
responsibility. The content is my responsibility. Of course, I rely on my colleagues for a lot of that information. I work cooperatively with the IT department, whose responsibility is kind of the back end and the technology and the security, making sure that the website works properly and is secure.
Great. And secondly, I don't know if we also have a policy, but something that there's always questionable about. The mayor was talking about the poll from the Cape Gazette, and it's all over the world. I don't know that we have a policy or have reviewed the issue of being able to maintain or develop a email contact list for our residents and businesses within the city limits, so that we can communicate with those individuals and understand whether it be an emergency situation or calendars in the mail or update on the trash schedule, whatever. I don't know that we have a policy of being able to gather and maintain email addresses for residents, business owners, because many of the people that we communicate with are outside of the city. They're visitors, that's fine, no question, but to really be able to communicate with the taxpayers and the businesses in the city.
Commissioner, we maintain a lot email addresses in the utility billing system. And we're very careful, a lot of people don't want those email addresses used for anything other than that purpose. So I think that there's not a policy, but that I know of, but I think we are kind of aware and careful not to use those email addresses unless.
I don't disagree with you, but I would fully support the efforts of our city to develop that and give the individual an option to opt out. Because if we do not try to push that communication out and we just assume that they don't want to hear it or don't give my email address to anybody, I think that's not the reflection or the way that we need to manage this data, my opinion.
And this is Groundhog Day. According to my notes from our budget discussion last year, we had a very similar conversation about a comprehensive list of email addresses for all City of Rehoboth residents and so forth. Just to echo exactly what Commissioner Gossett just said, this is Groundhog Day. We go over and over and over this issue. I could swear this is the 5th time.
Again, I'm just asking if we, establish a policy or something and go from there. That's
And last year, we were left with the impression, because I believe I pushed on this as well, we were left with the impression that this would be explored. Maybe it got lost in the shuffle, maybe it was not a priority, but this should not be a surprise to anyone.
And can I clarify what I think I'm hearing? You're looking for some type of module, whatever that's going to potentially be in with the engagement, communications engagement, for residents to be able to sign up for a variety of different topics that they are interested in receiving communications on. And it could be a laundry list of things for them to do, because I can't go out and get email addresses and then incorporate them, because if I'm not mistaken, that would be a violation of privacy and confidentiality, PI. But having that ability to have you sign up, like Commissioner Patrick Gossett, 1, 2, 3, 4 at yahoo.com. I want government, I want garbage, I want whatever emergency alerts, and half a dozen or a dozen different checklists, and you would catch those to your email address. Or I can opt out of this one Is that what I'm hearing? Or I think, I'm just trying to verify.
You are for me because I'm thinking about the engagement HQ that you're thinking about. If people don't opt in for it, how would they
how would we
ever
get
be
it? Yes.
part of a simple survey even?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying, I want to validate what I think I hear to make sure that we're going to go in the right direction. Because that's what I'm thinking. But to me, goes back to the paper. How do we get them to sign up other than multiple ways to get them included into it, whether it's social media, whether it's paper communication, whether it's any variety of different ways to make sure they understand we're here and I want to talk to you. I want to communicate with you.
Well, and that's the discussion. That's also the broader discussion we have yet to have, which is how much do we want to engage? You know, this is the upcoming meeting at some point, I think, Mayor, where we will have to determine what do we care about and then how do we want to get at it.
Right. I too have concerns with an email list. I think you're saying that for privacy reasons. I also think for maintenance reasons, you have to rely on them to subscribe for the information. And we do have two services that we currently use. We have Lines in the Sand, which is our digital newsletter. It goes out approximately 2 times a month. We currently have 6,034 subscribers. We also have our Beacon Alerts that go out via text and email when there is a problem or an issue in the city, and that has 1,886 subscribers.
You know, when we first, on the communications committee, when we first developed that website, we did, maybe Maxa, you can help me with memory, we did have a program where you could sign up to receive information on Parks and Shade Tree Commission events, Planning Commission events and all that. I don't know, I
think
thought we
Ann
put
still
it into
does
place, didn't we? And it, I don't know that it went anywhere, but at some point, I believe it dissolved, and I don't know what program we have today. Ann, what do you recall?
With the iCompass program that I use, you go in there and anybody can go in and sign up for each individual entity. If you want to have a poll for the meetings, it'll send it out every time that I do an agenda or public notice or whatever. Or if you decide to just opt for Parks and Shade Tree, just check that box, and that's what you'll get.
So that's something worth maybe investigating. I guess the problem is we have not been marketing in that, and there's nobody that knows about that anymore, you know, so.
And I think that it goes a lot back to how best do we market the various communications tools that we have across government, across the bandstand. All of those things should be layered and provided so people have a way, I want the various entities, I want to know information here, and I think that'll help us. I mean, this isn't the end-all be-all, but it's more of we're just trying to figure out what we want to look like and then what we want to better communicate. Yes, sir.
I know that, speaking of Groundhog Day, I know there was reluctance with the past city manager about using Nextdoor, but I'm on here right now. It's the 1 square mile. There's 1,255 people on it. You have to put in your City of Rehoboth Beach address in order to get accepted to be on it. And so we never seemed to communicate through here because we didn't want to. And that's where I think majority of our residents and visitors go to look for information. So I would recommend if we're going to go out and get another sort of software to engage people, that we have to at least advertise it on here to let people know about it, and or when there's some major things happening, we discuss them here, but we tend to allow the narrative to get way ahead of us, and we ignore a lot of these tools that are already there. So that's my frustration with this.
Okay. I mean, I've seen and heard Nextdoor multiple times in different venues. It is not without hazard. It is not without opportunities to get embroiled into a discussion that may or may not shed better light. And once you're in a platform, you can never come out of a platform. And I am hesitant to do it. I'll be honest with you. We did a lot of research, looked at different near-peer communities and opportunities. It is a platform outside of our management tools. And so that would require additional time, space, and resources and opportunities. So it is not something that we
Right,
can.
but I'm not talking about getting in a debate or arguing with
Oh, I know.
anybody on next door. I'm just saying, when there's major issues, I last year called City Hall to find out if the circle was closed during Sea Witch. I couldn't find an answer anywhere, and nobody here had an answer for me. And so there's things like that we should be able to say, Sea Witch is coming, here's the road closures. That's all, not a debate.
I hear you, Commissioner Bennett, and I have mentioned Nextdoor several times in the past. And after the last meeting that I mentioned, and I thought about it some more, the only way that it would work for a municipality to use it in the way that you're talking about is if there is a way to turn off any way for people to comment. And if that tool doesn't exist, it won't work. Because whether you want to engage a debate or not, it will happen.
Right.
And my only concern with this one, a policy, and this is multiple states, I'm not sure if this is nationwide or not, but I believe this is at federal level. If I turn off comments on one platform, I must disable across them all. I must be uniform across all social media platforms. I can either turn them on or turn them off, but I can't be subjective about what I do this. So again, this is why I wanted to make sure we research this and have a good dialogue. It's just a very in-depth discussion.
So the research that you've already done, I think surfaced, was it 3 different communities?
3 of 17.
3 of 17 that actually use it. So have we actually talked to them? Or what did we find from them yet? I would love to hear from the 3 that are actually using it, where they feel, did they make a mistake and now they have no choice but to remain? Or are they finding it a valuable piece of information? Because I think the frustration up here, or I can only really speak for myself and commissioners that I've heard make same comments over and over and over again, it's always very sensitive in wanting to be heard.
Yes.
So I can extrapolate that. If I'm frustrated as a commissioner that wants to be heard about public sentiment and public engagement, can you imagine our residents and our community that want to be heard and they feel like there's no avenue for me to do that? So we've either got to present the avenues or explain why Nextdoor is not going to be a choice for us if that's the decision we were to make. Because it is a constant feedback of, you're not doing things right, you're not communicating. We are communicating. You might not be looking at that particular way that we're communicating. So we've got to evaluate that. So the frustration is real. It is depressing to me to hear that after last year's budget meeting that we didn't go further with some of the comments that were made, that you were not, let's say, highly encouraged to go further with those comments. But I think now we have a more refreshed group that is more open and wanting to understand what can we do to make progress.
The only comment I want to make on the emails, and I mean, there are several opportunities through the portal, and I guess you can sign up for your email for lines in the sand, you can sign up for the beacon alerts.
Right.
My concern with us housing a list of email addresses is the security of that. Is that everything we have now, is it encrypted in some way, or is it just an Excel spreadsheet?
No, what we have now is managed by the websites that we use to communicate. So the alerts are through Nixle. I can't even see who signed up. I can't change the information. Okay. And then MailChimp is the company that we use to do the lines in the sand. I can add folks to that. I have not had any security issues with it, but
I want to be clear, sure, I guess, because there have been issues in the past with organizations in town where their email lists were inappropriately used. That email address, those email addresses, they should never come to any elected official. Only staff should have access to it. I just want to make sure that there's security parameters around those, that they're secured.
I completely agree. I asked Lynn to look at the potentiality of adding up, making sure all commissioners were signed up for certain alerts, because I wanted to see. And she's like, I can't do that when it has to be the individual on the front end doing it. So those kind of security protocols are there, and we cannot just scoop up them and share them.
But MailChimp is a little different. You can export email addresses from that program, I'm sure.
Probably, I believe.
We'll have to verify what the security protocols are. I don't know.
But for the purposes of the budget
Yeah.
and getting you the funds that will enable you to move forward, I have no problem with that.
Weren't we there 30 minutes ago?
We were, and I've tried twice now to say, for the purposes of the budget, Mayor, if you would work with me, we could have moved on 30 minutes ago.
One last comment on it.
Oh, good
Just
Lord.
one, of course. Just whatever we do, if we could be ADA compliant with all of our platforms. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Well, that actually is a new thing, isn't it?
Very new.
Yeah, 'cause- yeah.
But it's mandatory.
Yeah.
So.
Federal law, we got to get there. So anything we do, will be completely ADA compliant. Max and I talked about that just a couple days ago, making sure we're looking about that.
So Lawrence or Lynn, anything further on communications?
I don't think so. I don't have anything else. I don't know if
Commissioners, anything
there are
further?
further suggestions.
No, very good. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming here.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to seasonal employee incentives. Sounded like you might punt.
No, there's no punting on this one. I can give you some history on this one.
Okay.
Evan put together what happened, and he said, we actually put it on an email, maybe absent by the time seasonal employee incentives discussed, so I wanted to have you information from this past summer. Talking about housing allowance, 3 cadets took advantage of the opportunity with $6,000 paid directly to the landlord rental agreement, as Chief Banks alluded to. The end of summer bonus for the streets department, there were 15 part-time and seasonals that took advantage and received $1 per hour, who worked from May 23rd to September 11th with a total cost to the city of $7,276. And a recruitment bonus, 2 full-time streets employees received $200. Those are the ones that we currently have, but the seasonal employee incentives are much greater in scope this year than they were last year, I believe. So.
Very good.
Yes. I didn't have any.
Nothing? Okay. Any questions for Lawrence?
Is there anything you,
Just,
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
my thoughts are that we're just barely starting to scratch on what we could get into with seasonal employee incentives. And I really encourage you to keep it up, keep going. And I know it's going to hit Bert, but I think it's money well spent, and I think we just got to do it. It's our brand, it's our town, it's our everything. And having Chief be 5 or 6 cadets short, and then having the homeowners association come in front of us and say you're not enforcing your law, we just need to do it. We just need to do it.
I mean, I think as we spoke about several weeks ago, it's a complicated issue that spans all of the coastal communities. It spans a lot more than just the coastal communities. But seasonal employees is difficult. Workforce housing, Mayor Mills and I went down to Ocean City and had a wonderful lunch with their manager, assistant manager, public works, and mayor to talk about this workforce housing. I have spent an exorbitant amount of time driving around areas and neighborhoods west of Route 1, from Millsboro all the way down, all the way out through Dagsboro and everywhere in between. I'll be honest with you, workforce housing is almost non-existent. I mean, just a blunt, non-existent, and housing market is incredibly expensive. And I haven't even made a bid on the house, and I'm noticing one day that it's there, the next day it's gone, with in excess of $600,000 and $700,000 and $800,000 homes.
Not a lot of haggling over pricing.
No, and there's the existing market is almost non-existent. So all you're doing is looking at new builds. So that is another major component to workforce housing across the depth and breadth of our area, Sussex County, all the way into Kent. So yes, so how do we combat that one? That's a long-term problem. What's the short-term solution is these seasonal incentives have to be provided. And so when we have seasonal employees that say, what can you do for me? Having this in our arsenal will help. And it may just be becoming more. So
I had a long discussion with Senator Huxtable before he was elected. He promised that this was his bag, and he wanted to do everything he could do, and he had a lot of ideas, and I think we ought to hit him up and say, hey, you promised, let's do it.
Yeah.
Affordable housing.
I was just texting with him the other day.
Well, yeah, that was his job before he became our senator. Thank you.
Well, the Chambers had two luncheons recently and back to back, and both of them have focused on affordable housing. And what I learned just in brief is affordable housing is not the same thing as low-cost housing. It's not the same thing as seasonal housing, and it's pretty challenging as far as what we could do. You know, it has to do somewhat with zoning and this and that and density, and it's not something we would do within our incorporated limits. But it is a tough nut to crack, I think. Anything else on this topic? If not, then we go to citizen comment, and there's no members of the public here. And so we will adjourn this meeting.
Mayor, I'm sorry.
I want to remind everybody that this is budget meeting number 3. Budget number 4 is Monday, March 6th at 2 p.m. And it looks on the meeting calendar schedule developed by Evan and Lawrence. The budget presentation is the final review of all departments and the capital improvement program. So we'll go through, I guess, the entirety of the CIP at that time. And then we do have a 5th meeting, if we need it, on the morning of Friday, March 17th. That would be a budget meeting that's already scheduled if needed, because if you recall, the afternoon regular 2 o'clock meeting is when we are planning to consider adoption of the budget, and by charter, we are required to adopt it at that time.
Mayor,
Commissioner.
to follow up on that, and I have another comment too, but I'll say for it. So the next and what could be the final meeting is just focus on the CDP, or I'm sorry, the CIP.
Well, review of all departments. You indicated earlier that you had a question back here
Right,
somewhere.
to add
So that
them,
would
yeah,
be-
yeah, yeah.
So we have the opportunity to go over the entirety of the budget again. I imagine that conversation would be more streamlined than what we've had here, but there is that opportunity. And I think until we get through the next meeting, we can't really determine whether or not we're going to need that budget meeting 5. It could be that the budget meeting 5 is a 30-minute meeting, who knows, just to target one thing. But again, I think we'll have to be flexible. You had a second thing before I go to Commissioner Gossett?
I just had one comment related to the donation piece of it. At the last meeting, Commissioner Sharp, I think you posed some additional questions to Main Street, which I think it had to do with strategic planning and stuff like that. You had asked questions.
Oh, it was from the notes from their February 2022 newsletter.
Right.
Yes.
So I did ask them to address that, and rather than coming to another budget meeting, they're going to include that in their update this afternoon.
Oh, that'll be great.
Very good.
I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you. Commissioner Gossett?
Yeah, just curious, when you talking about final review of all departments, is that when we are able to go back and answer or ask outstanding questions? I mean, one of the things that I am concerned about and has been brought forward by the Homeowners Association is code enforcement. And the initial discussion that we had at the first budget meeting about building and licensing, there's no increase that I can see in salaries or part-time or seasonal labor or what have you. So I don't know how that's going to be addressed. To me, that's a key
Well,
factor, so.
And you heard me earlier say that that was a concern. So yes, I would say this definitely can be on there. It's really carte blanche of what we can bring up at the next meeting. But I would say that's part of it. And I think just somebody has to initiate the conversation.
And Mayor Mills, if I could speak
Yeah.
onto that one. The contingency aspect of it that I've put into, or requested that Evan and Bert put into the administrative side of the house is, we will make sure that the full build-out includes furniture. I mean, that was one of the things we talked about. I wanted to get at least the numbers for potential areas working in, and also the assistant city manager's office in that contingency. At a later discussion later today, I would like to have some other discussions about potential increases. But what I'm trying to do right now is give myself some space and time, assessment, and then potentially look at an opportunity for expansion at a later date based off that assessment and based off of the demonstrated need that you have brought forward and other commissioners have brought forward. So what you're saying is, I'm listening, I'm hearing you. It may not be reflected in the numbers that you see, but there's an opportunity for that for later on. And I don't know if I say anything more, Bert's going to hit me in the back of the head with a 2x4 because he's already looking at me like I'm going over budget. And I promised I wouldn't stick my fingers too much in the budget development process, but listening to what you're telling me over the last several weeks it's not lost on these ears, and it's not observed by these eyes.
I would appreciate for the next time a written write-up of the conversion upstairs and the costs and all that.
That is being worked on right as we speak, and we will present
That's
that.
good.
Yeah.
And then I would also encourage the commissioners that if indeed you have questions that maybe go beyond this group here to any of the Main Street, the museum or library or anything, that you convey them to the city manager so that he can contact them and we get maybe written responses from them, or they're invited to show up so that we can get them resolved in one meeting. Otherwise, we definitely have to go to a fifth meeting.
So Mayor, just quickly on enforcement, when the board members were here from the Homeowners Association, I believe your final thought to them was, we hear you and we'll get back to you.
And
so I just wondered.
I'm going to be passing that off. I don't think I have yet.
Okay.
To him and let him get together with him so that he could meet him face to face.
Got it.
Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association. So
I have a meeting scheduled with them already, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I already have a meeting scheduled.
I believe so. Yeah. So that is something important. But again, just to reiterate, we'll talk about it further, but the enforcement issue is very important to me. You know, we used to have a very good enforcement program with Bobby when he here, and then I think we got a little lax on it. So we'll bring that up at the next meeting. But the desire there is, Lawrence, is to, most likely the desire is to have weekend enforcers from building and licensing to go around and enforce the noise code and stuff like that. So if you could give that some thought, and we'll reiterate our points at the next meeting. Is there anything further?
Only thing, unless I'm misreading it in the CIP, I don't see any reflection for funding or anything from the Baltimore-Wilmington streetscape. So if you can just reply to me on that, that's cool.
I thought that was
It may be there, I just may be misreading it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't put my finger on it. I think it's in there,
Okay,
but if
maybe
not,
I just, the lines blur after a while,
but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up. With that, I want to thank everybody. We will adjourn this meeting at 12. Well, first I want a reminder, we have a meeting at 2 o'clock, regular meeting in this room. And so we'll adjourn this meeting at 12:24 p.m. Thank you very much, Lawrence, Bert, Kevin, Lynn.